All you hardcores out there, how are you doing? Now, there's a video there, Terry's Take number 32, and it's a sit down with Larry Alabama, ex-heavyweight boxer and sprinter, and he's explaining about drugs. It's a 13-month-old video from last June. So I just want you to sit and listen to it. All you people who think you know a lot about performance-enhancing drugs, and listen to these two experts, because they know what they're on with. All right? Peace out.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.
That'll do. Way overslip. And again, the ball flies away for 4 runs. Now, no bowler enjoys this, although he's asked to attack. Angus Fraser really would hate to give away runs. He's giving away no balls. And this flies away for 4.
Tendulkar on 98. And there it is. Test match 100 for Tendulkar. Aged
Welcome back, guys. You know what time it is. Number 100. Back at it again. The number one podcast in the sport, where, much like the Queen Mother, people hoped I'd make it to 100. So we're still here. We're still standing. I think I've probably had, 6 weeks off. And it's been a useful time away. More on that in another episode. But really, you're here for number 100, and for me, I think you look at the timestamp and you can kind of figure out what this episode is going to be about. So all I'll say is there are a number of options we could have done for number 100, and it could have gone in any which way. And things rose and things fell. But I'd had this episode in the chamber for weeks, actually. And I just kind of sat on it, but I knew it would be good to go whenever I got the microphone up and running. How do you describe? I'm trying to describe how I feel, because I'm obviously recording this after I recorded the episode. There's a lot in that episode, and it's fitting that number 100 goes to the man who almost single-handedly changed how a lot of fans view boxing. I'm not talking necessarily about people go, oh my God, he's got Carl Froch. No, he's a former guest, and he's been on before. His episode did the most numbers, so he's kind of number 100 on merit. And we continue a conversation we started, and the conversation that changed boxing. It's rare. If you really break this down, it's rare you get a moment in boxing, whoever you are. It's rare that a podcast gets that moment. And when me and Larry did that episode 2 years ago, just over 2 actually, a lot of things changed in boxing. I thought fan perception changed. The view of doping in boxing changed. And there was a healthy cynicism about what people were seeing. And I think that discussion's carried on over the last 2 years. But one thing I will say is it's also forced us to ask ourselves, do we really care that much about doping? And I think we explore a load of issues in episode 100. And it may make sense if you're new to the podcast to go back to the original episode with Larry. I think it might have been episode like 70 of the Beautiful Boxing podcast, I'm guessing. But it's round about the 70 region, so you got to scroll way back. But it's worth it, because a lot of this stuff will make sense if you've heard the first episode. I'm being honest, because what we didn't want to do this time was hammer people with too much detail. So we kept this one quite thematic, whereas the first episode is quite detailed. So if you really want to know the intricacies of how things work, that's what you do. We jump into some of that, obviously. But the important thing here was just to give an overview of what's happened in the last couple of years and where we think things are going. And I think it's informative. This is a whole concept of beyond boxing. You have to open your mind to the fact that there are other things happening that can impact boxing, but they're also equally interesting in their own right. And if you can bring those to an audience that's primarily boxing driven, I think it just gives us more informed fans and better fans. So I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. I hope you guys do too. I think it's a fitting way to close off the first 100. And I think beyond that, we not necessarily that we'll move in a different direction, but I've committed myself to having more fun doing these. So enjoy this. Look out for what comes afterwards. No idea what yet, but we'll keep pushing. And the important thing to say is if you enjoy this content, share it. I'm not so precious anymore whether it's a visible share or you're just telling someone at work to have a listen or you're giving someone a nudge in the gym. The important thing is that it's getting shared and the word's getting out, because year on year the numbers go up. So I know a lot of you guys are doing the good things that I really appreciate and respect. And when people say they're a fan, I always say you're not really a fan until you share something. Then you're a real fan, you're an advocate. And they're the people I'll tend to bond with because they're putting their nuts on the line. And really, that's what life's about. So without further ado, let me just hand over to Larry and say, enjoy, like, share, and hopefully it's good to be back. So Larry, how have you been?
I've been all right, T. I've been all right, man. I've as you know yourself, been doing a lot of acting. That's my new career now. Been in Venom 2, been in 2 episodes of EastEnders. A couple of bits and pieces that I've done I can't really mention at the moment until near the time it comes out. So yeah, I'm doing well. Auditioning for this, that, and the other as well. Getting close to some really big parts. Looking for that big break. But yeah, otherwise I'm not too bad. Also, I had a son. Got a 13-month old son. That's driving me a bit crazy, but it's all good. But yeah. Life, I can't complain. Life has been good, man.
So you might have actually had the busiest lockdown.
Yeah.
Because I know you're definitely pushing the acting thing, fatherhood, obviously. You've also got the Gym Rat Pack video podcast as well on YouTube. So if anyone wants to follow that, go for it.
Right. So thank you for reminding me. See, that's how much stress I'm under right now. You forgot to mention that. Obviously, we started that last September. and that's going really well. Like you said, it's called the Gym Rat Pack Does Entertainment. Me and two other friends of mine who are actors and love the gym as well. And we just do entertainment news and reviews and trailer reactions and stuff like that. So if people want to see some of that, please jump up to YouTube and then check that out, man. The Gym Rat Pack Does Entertainment.
Are any of them part of the Muscleworks crew?
Yes. Well, they both used to go to Muscleworks. I think we all live too far to start to be going there regularly. I mean, I always pop my head in now and again, as they do, but I think we've all moved out a little bit too far to be going there as regularly as we used to be. So yeah, they are all part of the old Muscleworks crew, definitely.
Do you know what I love?
All actors.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I went back there. So I've been back there probably in the last 2 or 3 months because I hadn't been to the Valence Road one since it opened. But it's all the same equipment. Okay. I love that. It's just the same equipment. So you just kind of slot back in, don't you? You go, well, this is all familiar to me.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it. Except obviously they've got the ring in there now, so that's made it even more exciting to be in that, because now you're getting a lot of boxers come in there to train, and a lot of females are now picking up boxing there as well.
A lot of people needing guidance, Larry.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't even get down there anymore, man. So to be honest, to be able to do that, so. But you got quite a few celebrities down there as well. You got Ralph Fiennes, who's there 2 or 3 times a week. He's got a trainer there. Who else goes down there? I've actually, because he's a family friend, I've taken Arian Bakare, the actor, down there a couple of times. So yeah. You can spot a couple of celebrities now and again,
Yeah, and the thing is, for people who don't know Muscleworks, right? It might be the rawest gym you'll ever go to. Like you never bench press with identical weights on either side. All the 20s look different. The bars have seen better days. The machines have probably seen better days, but everything works.
Yeah. It's definitely as you said, it's one of the rawest gyms in London, probably even the UK. Yeah. I mean, there's only a few other gyms I know of. One being Dave Beatty's gym, Bulldog Gym in Wembley.
Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah,
which can even compare to that. Do you know what I mean? Just the rawness. And it's funny because Muscleworks used to be a men only gym up until a few years ago.
Yeah,
and I always thought that it would lose that rawness when females started going there, but it hasn't. You actually get hard training females in there as well.
Mate, I've got stories about. I can't. They can't be on this podcast, but wow, there's some stories behind that. That's for damn sure.
We have to talk afterwards.
Listen, 100, mate, 100.
Yeah, but yeah, no. I'm loving that it's kept that vibe. Obviously, like I said, I don't really get to go as much as I used to because I don't live near the gym anymore, but. Again, like I said, now and again, I'll pop through because I'm a good friend of the owner staff, and obviously still know plenty of guys that go there and stuff. So yeah, man, I'm glad that gym hasn't lost any of its luster, in terms of being one of the more hardcore gyms in London and the UK.
It never will, man. You go in there, it's humid as anything. You're training and you're like, why does everything feel so much harder than it does everywhere else? But you leave there and you just you've got your workout, and I don't know, there's a magic there that makes you train harder.
Yeah, 100%. And you don't get that in many gyms. You really don't. Really don't. It's that there's something about the atmosphere in that gym that is just yeah.
But really, look, we need to get to the nuts and bolts of this, right? Because this is episode 100 and everyone was asking me what you're going to do for number 100, and I've swung between every possible option. I have. I was like, what do I do? Do I just do a State of the Union address? Do I do this? Do I do that? And then I just looked in my DMs, and the biggest question was, when's Larry coming back? We need Larry back. And then I looked at the numbers that episode did, and it's like an outlier.
Wow.
It's an outlier. I promise to God, the impact of that episode I can't really measure because I'm not like in everyone's house. But I remember one of the England rugby girls sharing that, and she wrote on Instagram, "It's mad that two guys from boxing are talking about this and no one in rugby is talking about this." And that went to her universe. So I got like a spike of 700 spins like a year later. Yeah. Which is unheard of. Do you know what I mean? It was mad. The messages I was getting, people getting in touch, going, no one's done that before. Trainers were coming up to me. I've always suspected so-and-so's on drugs. What do you think? And I was like, oh my God, and it's rare when you do a podcast that you can have something that you call a moment. But that was a moment because there was boxing talk before that episode and there was boxing talk after that episode. And after that episode, fans just were so cynical about everything they saw. And I was like, yeah, we had the right effect.
Yeah.
How did you find it? Because there's one moment, I remember once, you were on that Poxon thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think it was Liam Smith was trying to go back and forth with you. And he was trying to say, you know what I mean? Like, oh, boxing doesn't have a drug problem. And, you know, why should we listen to someone who got caught? And I was just there going, oh my God, he doesn't get it. Do you know what something felt a bit like? I'm like, mate, you're sounding guilty here.
Yeah.
That's what I felt. I felt you're sounding guilty. I've seen the CMP logo on your T-shirt. You're red flagging to me.
Right. You see, I mean, because he did one by himself first, didn't he? And then I was asked to retort. And then they got us both on there. And he was a lot calmer when I was on there. And, you know, the questions, you know, he just showed what lack of knowledge he actually had. But he was respectful. I give him that. He wasn't as disrespectful as he was when I wasn't on there the first time when he was talking to Poxon and whatnot. Because obviously I was there and I could retort and I have the knowledge. And you see, this is the problem with a lot of these people, especially athletes or boxers, should I say, that want to speak on things like this with either no knowledge or obviously that they're doing something and they're just trying to cover their backs by, you know, going the other way. So, and I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just saying that seems to be the case, you know. And instead of taking things and really thinking about it and just looking through history, really. I mean, you only have to look through history to see what I am saying is correct. You know, it's not that I'm coming up with my own deductions or theories and whatnot. This is just fact, what we've been seeing over the years. I mean, Eddie Hearn made the same mistake as well, didn't he? When I made on the same podcast, I said that you know, I believe 80% of elite boxers are doping, and he came out and said, "Oh, ridiculous! It's nonsense and this and that." But then we went back through his history, and how many of these boxers do you have in your pay-per-view? People that have been caught 2 or 3 times. So, you know, it's a nonsense. These people, they think people in general are not paying attention to this, but they are. You know, and when someone like myself and yourself get on a platform to really lay out what's going on and to a certain extent how it's going on, that's when people start thinking, aha, okay, their eyes start to open. And as you said, that aha moment is I'm glad that's happening. I'm glad, and I don't mean they should be accusing everyone of using performance enhancing drugs, because that's not what we're trying to do. But what we are trying to do is open people's eyes to see that the so-called problem, in quotes, of performance enhancing drugs is in all sports, is not going anywhere, and is actually getting worse, not better, as the establishment would like you to believe. You know, so yeah.
And you're right. And I was watching that period there where you know, I mean, Poxon definitely embraced his. I mean, he was taking a buccaneering approach, like, you know, he was the white knight to save sport and to shine light. And I was just listening to him talk. I was like, mate, you're still on doping 1.0. Do you know what I mean? You're still talking about huffing a huge amount of Dynabol down your throat and stuff. And I was like, the game's moved on so much. And
It really has.
I was like, you're not talking about where it's at right now. And it's not a bad thing you're doing, but you're making a lot of noise about one small sliver of it. And the rest of it's happening outside of your field of view. And sometimes you've got to say to us like, Poxon, listen, leave it to the people who are elbow deep in all of this. Because, like I said, that episode went everywhere, Larry. Like, I had female bodybuilders, powerlifters, male bodybuilders, powerlifters that I follow going, how do you know so much about this? You don't touch anything. I was like, listen, I've been around a lot of you guys a long time. You know what I mean? It's all kind of crept out. But what actually surprised me, Larry, like when I look at these 2 years, are the number of women taking shit. And I got a lot of DMs from women taking stuff, telling me their story about, boyfriends prescribing them. I think one woman was on something ridiculous, like 50 milligrams of test a week.
Wow.
I was like, yo, you're about to reassign your gender. Wow. I got dangerous stuff was happening. Women who haven't had periods for 2 years, all of these horror stories were coming through to me. And they were like, at least people like you are talking about this, because not many people come out. Like, look, maybe it's a British thing. Like, and I'm going to use women as an example here because it's harder for them to talk about this stuff. But when I talk to women involved in strength and power sports, they'll tell me what they're taking. A lot of them regret starting, but they're like, I'm in too deep now. The side effects have already licked me. I may as well see how far I can take this now. And it's heartbreaking, but you kind of nod your head and go, I kind of understand. And so you have, you have those ladies. And then also you have some of these younger ladies who are a bit more enlightened, and now they're looking at protocols. So they're like, look, as women who are doing this, it's our job to educate other women. And so you're getting a lot of that. Like a lot of these Brits are just being open about what you're taking. And it's worth saying to people listening to this now, for considering what we're about to get into. Don't do this without medical supervision. Don't do this without getting your bloods done every 8 weeks or so. Don't play around with your system, because if you fuck around with the wrong thing, that's you done. Like some of this stuff ain't reversible. So don't be cavalier with it. You need medical supervision. You need the right people around you, because some of the athletes we've talked about before, they've got teams around them that make sure nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
Brits are pretty open. I find it harder with the Americans. Americans will tell you they're doing what they're doing natural. They still talk like that, natural. I'm just like, you're not doing what you're doing naturally. and it's almost embarrassing because, the thing with Instagram now is we've got a longitudinal study of how you used to be and how you used to sound. So if your voice has changed in the last 4 or 5 years, like noticeably changed, you can't tell us that Ty Mitchell punched you in the throat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. On the subject of women, we've got, I think she's either Miss Olympia Physique or Miss Olympia Fitness. I can't remember, Dana Lynn Bailey.
Yeah.
And she is one of the biggest liars when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs. You only have to look at her physique to know that she's using performance-enhancing drugs. And yet, every single time, she's denying it, and making stupid excuses that, oh, well, I train so hard, and if I use performance-enhancing drugs, I'll be a lot bigger than I am now. The same old stupid excuses that you hear from lots of people like that. And it's just like, give it a rest, because, this is the problem that I think I think men and women with these fake natties, as they like to call them. I think men and women have the same problem, but women especially, because obviously, as you said, these are male hormones. So essentially, what you're doing is turning yourself male. And if you do not have, I'm not an advocate of women using anabolic steroids as a performance enhancing drug purely because of that. I mean, there's so many other performance enhancing drugs that you can use now that don't have those side effects and not male hormones. There's no need to use male hormones. You know, that for women, that's a thing of the past as far as I'm concerned. But then again, you know, women are when they hear someone like Dana Lynn Bailey saying that, and then they get into the gym and they train for years and diet, and they don't see the same results. It then goes back to, okay, well, I know she's using that, but then now what do I do? And then they get advice from their boyfriend, for instance, who's got no idea what women should be using. And then it's a slippery slope. And like you said, some of them will have such side effects that they can't reverse, and they'll just be right. I'm all in that, and I don't care, you know. So yeah, and then the same goes for men in the sense as well, because you get a lot of these guys, you know, especially these fitness guys, these classic physique guys, or whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm natural, when nothing could be further from the truth. And then they're selling programs to guys, and the guys think, oh, if I buy this program, I'll look like them. And then they're training for years, eating well and whatnot, and don't look anything like them. And then the realization comes that, oh, they're on performance enhancing drugs. But then they go the other route. Instead of taking it moderately, they try to make up for lost time by just taking a boatload of stuff. And then they end up being ill, you know, and not getting the results they want in the first place as well. So, yeah, it's these fake natties, especially like you said, especially in America. It is a problem. It is a problem.
Do you know what? If you go back to Dana Lynn Bailey, do you remember there was a time when she was like the #1 fitness person on Instagram?
Yeah.
And she's almost disappeared now, hasn't she? Someone told me that she had a bit of a breakdown, and so their gym tanked. Like, their business went a bit wrong, so they had to sell everything up, and they moved to like Colorado. And now, if you notice, she's a lot smaller. Her husband's a lot smaller. Something happened where they were like, yeah, we're drawing attention to ourselves here. And I think people just, you know what happens when you start perpetrating a myth, people will interrogate it. Yeah.
And I think, you know, the public at large, I think a lot of these channels on YouTube that dissect natty or not, like more plates, more dates, you know, like a Greg Doucette. These channels are very good at calling out these fake natties, and they do it in a scientific way as well, especially with more plates, more dates. So, and then like you said, also they use the Instagram data of the pictures, you know, befores and afters, and the progression and whatnot. And I think people are getting more clued up now. So, as far as Dana Lynn Bailey is concerned, the more she shouts from the rooftops that she's natural, the less she is being revered and used in the fitness model sphere. You know what I mean? And like you said, I've not really. She has really taken a back seat for the longest time now compared to others. So yeah,
some of these call themselves natural because they're using the topical application. They're not injecting. They're using topical application. So they're like, well, I'm not injecting steroids, am I? You're like, are we playing this game? Is this a game we're playing?
Yeah, you get So some people just, I mean, some people take farms and they'll say, oh well, I'm natural because I'm not taking anabolic steroids, but you're still taking something that acts on the androgen receptor. So that's not natural, is it? I mean, you get also people who take things like Clomid or Nolvadex for men anyway, and that obviously increases your natural testosterone production, and they will claim natty. But if you're natural, you wouldn't have that normal a test level without that substance. So no, that's not natural, you know. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that, but you should let people know what you're doing, and not claiming natural is not the right way to go about it, you know. I mean, there's a lot of guys. There's Ulysses, for instance, who I actually I know quite well. He's a really nice guy as well. But he very recently, in the last year or two, took the word natural off his profile, and I'm glad he did, because he's not, right? You know, I mean, only an idiot would think he was natural. And I'm glad he's done that, you know, and it's for the rest of them, like the Simeon Pandas of this world and whatnot, to do the same, because no one's going to think any less of them, because despite having to use performance enhancing drugs, you still have to do the work. This is what a lot of people don't seem to understand. And, you know, because if it was that easy, everyone would be popping PEDs like candies and, you know, be sprouting muscles everywhere. But it doesn't work like that, you know. You still have to work hard, you know. So, yeah.
Because there's only a handful of 1 in a million people by definition. But if you look at Instagram, it's like everyone's become a 1 in a million physique.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's yeah. I mean, that's the proof. That's the proof. That's part of the proof right there, you know.
Larry, like, we're of a similar generation. Do you remember when we were young? If someone could bench 3 plates, right? That was impressive.
Oh yeah.
If you could bench 3 plates in your gym, you could walk around any way you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the young girl? What's her name? Mahalia someone. Wait, there's a girl that's 17, 18, right? She benched 320s and a 10.
Wow.
I've seen her rep 320s.
Well, is she a powerlifter?
Yeah, American powerlifter. All looks a bit like child abuse to me, if I'm being honest with you. Because you're giving someone under the age of 18 anabolics. Clearly, I don't want to hear none of this. She's natural. She's a one-off. Shut up. She's not. Not at that weight there.
Not with that kind of weight. Nah, that's just not possible. That is not possible. I mean, that sounds like another Richard Sandrak. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
That sounds like another one of those. Yeah, like you said, 100% child abuse. 100%.
I mean, like, you got this young black girl, she's surrounded by just hillbillies. I'm like, what the hell is this? And you're almost like, where are her parents?
In on it, probably. In on it, man. You know? They think they're going to make a certain amount of money. You know, yeah, it's sick, to be honest with you. Again, like I said, with that Richard Sandrak, it was the same thing. His dad was feeding him. I mean, that was even worse, because he was, well, I presume worse anyway, because I don't know what's going on with the 17-year-old. But I mean, he was being force-fed PEDs, you know, before being 10 years old. It was ridiculous. Yeah, how his parents are not in jail, I don't know, but it's it's sad. It's really sad, man. I mean, you know, that there's no call for that. You know, there's no call. Like you said, you called it right the first time. Child abuse. That's exactly what it is. I don't even consider them, you know, athletes who should be using PEDs. They're children. So you know,
100%.
Yeah.
And it's almost opportune that we've given this time, because I was going to say, did you watch much of the Olympics? Because now that I'm a cynic about doping, I don't watch much of the Olympics, because I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, when you're like, there are people on Instagram who can probably do what you're doing now better than you. But I tell you what I did watch, though. I watched that 400 hurdles.
Okay.
That Norwegian guy smashed Kevin Young's record.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. See, I'm like you. I haven't watched any, not just Olympics, but athletics. You know, I used to be a sprinter before boxing. Yeah. I haven't watched any athletics in years. It just doesn't hold any interest for me anymore. And when Kevin Young broke that record, I remember watching that race. And when he broke that world record, I thought, that's in my lifetime, that's not going to get broken. And to hear that now, I mean, we knew Kevin Young was on stuff. You only have to look at his coaching staff, but to hear that was broken by a Norwegian, no less. I mean, yeah, it is.
Bro, I don't even think he was in a good lane. He just ran, and I was because I saw the race. I was like, ain't no one breaking Kevin Young's record. No way in hell. And he starts going, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, what? But he did the smart thing. He didn't do what Van Niekerk did. He slowed down at the end. He's like, hey, let me not make this look too hot. Insane. Like, and this is when you realize commentators are full of bullshit, right? Because I go back to when they said what made Kevin Young unique was that he was 6'4". He had a 12 stride pattern that changed down to 11. It's almost impossible to do that. And this Norwegian guy, I think he went from 13 down to 12. So I was like, well, I mean, he won running conventionally. Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the stride pattern.
You know? Man. Listen, whoever his chemist is, fair play. fair play, because there must have been a genetic component to that as well. Because I'm like, you broke a record that, like you said, you didn't think would be beaten. Now, on one hand, not many people want to run the 4x4. Sorry, not the 4x4, the 400 hurdles, because if you're fast, you're going to do the 100 or the 200. There's more money in that. But still, that record beggars belief. And where he's taking it to now.
What time did he run? Because he didn't. Please tell me he didn't run under 46 seconds. Because if he did that, then
no. So I don't think he did. But like, he might have come close. I'd have to Google that. But hey, someone in the Twitter world will tell us.
It was definitely 46 something, because I know the record Kevin Young did was, I think, 46.79.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something with, there was a 46.7. Yeah, he took a chunk out of that. I swear to God, he took a chunk out of that.
And that's crazy, because if you ran Kevin Young's world record time for 400 meters, that's just below international standard for 400 meter flat. Forget hurdles. For 400 meter flat, that's just below international time that you'd be running.
That's sometimes Dwayne Ladeja was running.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So it's mind blowing that these guys could run like that with how many hurdles in front of them, and it just makes you wonder if these guys really concentrated on the flat, what they'd be able to do. 400 flat, what would they be able to run?
Larry, 45.94.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's the new 400 hurdles world record. And you're going to tell me, and people are going to tell me that's clean. Are you nuts?
What did Ladeja win the Commonwealth Games at? Like, he might have won that in the 45s.
Yeah, I think that was a long time ago. I think even.
Like, do you remember, like, in the dark days of British sprinting in the 400, where we had Akabusi running with a third leg in the 4x4, and you had Grimley, Black, Ladeja, and we were rubbish at the 400. And those guys were winning like the 3A's title in like 45.24.
Yeah.
And this guy's jumping over things.
And running 45. And you're going to tell me that's clean. This is why I don't. You know what? I used to agree with because do you remember the old East German world record that was set, and they were saying, "Oh, we're going to get rid of some of them." And I think they did get rid of some of them because they were saying, "Okay, we've got evidence that they were using drugs and blah blah blah." And I was in favor of that at first, not because I'm against them using drugs, but just because it was known. If you're going to go by, it was known that they were using drugs. So you want to give other people a chance to set world records, cool. But then I thought to myself, you know what? Especially with what you've just told me now, everyone's using drugs covertly, and they all know about it. So then it's not fair to get rid of these world records because everyone's using drugs. And in fact, people have got better protocols now, as well as better training methods than they did back then. So it's just, if you can't break the world records from back then you're doing something wrong, basically. That's how I see it now.
100%. I think there's an honest discussion that's needed now. And we need to start asking the paying fans, do you want... Let's just get rid of WADA and let everyone just go as hard as they can.
I've said this to you. I think I said it in the first one we did, and I've said it to you privately, and I've said it to loads of people, and I'm saying it again. I 100% agree with you. We need to get rid of WADA. I think what we need to do now is do what Charlie Francis, Ben Johnson's coach, always said. You test these athletes for a position of health. So you test their health markers. If their health markers are not right, then you ban. And because remember, the ethos of this whole drug testing was to, one, level the playing field, and two, protect the athlete's health. It's not doing any of that. The playing field now is totally out of whack because this guy can afford to get a doctor, I can't, or this guy can afford to hire a pharmacist to make designer drugs. I can't, and even if you take the drugs out of it, it's never fair because this athlete has more money. He can go to warm weather training. He can afford a hyperbaric chamber. I can't. It's never fair. So that's nonsense, first of all. Then you're talking about the health of the athlete. Well, if the athletes are overdoing their performance-enhancing drug protocol or taking more dangerous performance-enhancing drugs to beat drug tests, you're not taking care of the athlete's health. Therefore, if you're letting athletes take what they want and then measuring their health markers before any event, and if those health markers are not in line, then they're banned. That is the fairest way to deal with this. That is 100% the fairest way to deal with it. Or they can even say this. They can even say, okay, you're only allowed to use the hormones that are naturally in your body. So that's your EPO, your testosterone, and your growth hormone, which anyway, most athletes are doing because that's how you get past drug tests. And that's what most athletes in the know are using those three substances in varying degrees anyway. So, it's a no-brainer. They're like, WADA are there, and that includes UK Anti-Doping, that includes USADA. They're all part of WADA. They're all there to get money because everyone knows they are not effective. It's as simple as that. They are not effective. So, and when they catch a big fish once in a while, like a Canelo or whatnot, it gets swept under the carpet. They get a little slap on the wrist, and basically they get told in the ear, "Don't get caught again, mate." That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's if they happen to land a big fish like that.
And they get pissed off when they land one with like,
Yeah. Because the big fish are the ones that's bringing the money to the sport. So they can't afford. It's like when Carl Lewis got caught. They have to keep that under the carpet. And then it's coming out years later after he's retired that he got caught. Well, it's a bit late now, isn't it? But he was down on these hypocritical rants about Ben Johnson when he was doing the exact same thing.
But isn't that always the case, right? The ones with the most to hide are the first ones with the opinions.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's what 100%. I say to people,
and that's why I've always respected Linford. Linford just got on with what he had to do. He never. Even I remember when they interviewed him about Ben Johnson, and he was like, "Listen, I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm just here to do what I'm here to do. If he felt that's what he had to do, then that's what he had to do. That's not my call to judge him. I've always loved Linford, man, and I loved him even more when I heard that. You know what I mean? And obviously, he was aware of what he was doing, and it's what the sport requires. It's so you don't jump down someone's throat just because they got caught because you don't know when it's going to be your turn.
Yeah, and the thing is to get to that level now. I'm not trying to hear this. Yeah, I did it all on genetics. The routines are too hard, man. The training regimes are too hard for the average Joe off the street. Even if he's got amazing genetics, for him to try that, it's not possible. I see some of these workouts where people will say, "Yeah, I have to do 5x5 deadlifts with 220 kilos." And that doesn't sound like a lot of work, right? Until you have to move that thing once.
Mm-hmm.
And you suddenly realize after doing it 25 times, man, you feel like you're drowning.
Spoken like a man that's experienced it.
Yeah, but you know that feeling, don't you, Larry? When you've done a lot of volume and your whole body just feels like it's full of water. You're like, what do? Yeah. Then you're like, I see why they take the stuff now because, whoo.
Yeah, exactly. I spoke to a friend of mine who I'm not going to name. He's not an athlete, but he was obese. He was, not doing well. He was suffering from depression. He wasn't doing very well, basically. So I outlined a protocol for him. With a doctor's supervision, to up his test naturally. No, not naturally, but with some Clomid that is prescribed to increase their testosterone levels, and also the doctor recommended that to help him lose weight, go on some small dose of growth hormone. So this was a very progressive doctor. And in the matter of a few months, this guy was a completely different person. Completely different. His mood, his attitude. It was literally like a different person. I mean, this is a person that was really depressed. And now he's got such a zest for life. And he's like, why don't they give this to all, everyone that's depressed? And I'm like, well, there you go. That's a good question. And he asked his doctor this, and his doctor was like, yeah, I mean, it would be a good candidate for people who are depressed, but for one reason or another, the medical establishment don't want to advocate these substances for that.
You know what that is, don't you?
Why do you think that is?
Doctors hate it when something comes to them and they don't discover it. So if you think about, and we'll come on to this in more depth later, but if you think about like the whole biohacking and self-medicating realm right now, right? Because essentially we're crowdsourcing new solutions to problems. So a lot of this knowledge is coming from people doing it in the real world, going, actually, if you take these substances in this combination, it can elevate your mood. Like people who are infertile, like men who are struggling with low sperm counts, there's all number of protocols out there that you can boost your sperm count and your sperm motility with. Loads of them. Because guys went out in the field and experimented. Doctors hate that.
Yeah.
In the same way when do you remember 2 years ago when people were saying, look, if you can take some quinine and some zinc, you can stave off this COVID. And doctors were like, no, you can't do that. It's like, but you guys were recommending that stuff for like malaria.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that was just for the dark-skinned people. Do you know what I mean? Like, but so when doctors hate it when people come at them with solutions. It's a weird thing about them. They almost think they're the guardians of everything health related.
Yeah. And that's why we need more progressive doctors like the doctor that helps my friend. They're few and far between. So if you do find one, hold on to them.
By all means. Hey, listen, man, they're probably out there helping footballers and rugby players.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I was going to say, though, on a side note, have you been following these bodybuilder deaths?
Sorry? Say that again?
Have you been following these bodybuilder deaths? So guys like Boston Lloyd and just passing away like on a weekly basis.
Yeah. See, this is it's a big problem. It's a big problem, and there's a lot of female deaths, a lot of female bodybuilder deaths in there as well. That I've noticed as well. But you see, here's the thing that a lot of people, including especially doctors, will not want to admit to. There's responsible PED use and there's irresponsible PED use. And again, if people look into channels like More Plates, More Dates, he is a very big advocate of responsible use. So there's a lot of ancillaries that you need to use if you want to use performance enhancing drugs, especially if you want to use them in a sport like, say, bodybuilding, where you've got to use a substantial amount. So there's things like to control your blood pressure, which is the biggest killer, telmisartan, which is a very accessible drug. I mean, it's prescribed all the time by doctors to control blood pressure, and it's a very effective medication. That's one of the biggest ones that people should be looking at if they're going to use performance enhancing drugs. Then there's also the possibility of using statins to control your LDL levels, to prevent heart attacks and stuff like that. So those are the two major ones. So those are the two major effects of why performance enhancing drugs use and why these guys are dying. Because if you don't control your high blood pressure, not only does it ruin your kidneys, but it also causes cardiac remodeling because of the amount of pressure on the arterial walls. So then the heart starts to take on a different kind of shape, it gets thicker in certain parts, it shouldn't be getting thicker, and eventually that's what leads to a heart attack. And if a lot of these guys were doing that and just using these ancillary drugs, which don't cost anything, and you can easily get it prescribed by a doctor now if you have high blood pressure or high LDL count, they wouldn't be dead right now. But unfortunately, a lot of these guys don't. Their health is secondary. Their performance is first, and their health is secondary, and that's a dangerous mindset to have. Because as you saw with Boston Lloyd and even Rich Piana, they were just doing all sorts of nonsense. Like Rich Piana was snorting his pre-workout with recreational drugs. I mean, what? Why would you think that was a good idea? And then Boston Lloyd was just taking everything under the sun. Obviously, he didn't have very good genetics, but he took everything under the sun, and that's such dosages that other bodybuilders would win. Other bodybuilders doing similar things would win. So yeah, it's I think it's just, and then we've now got the first a recent Mr. Olympia in Sean Roldan dying of a heart attack. Yeah, these people just need to really take stock of their health. And you got a lot of bodybuilders as a consequence now downsizing. And a lot of them are questioning, why they're doing this, because they're seeing all these bodybuilders drop dead. Listen, like I said, it's responsible use. Think about your health first. Yes, there is responsible ways of using these things, but as with anything, you use it irresponsibly, and then you're going to see the consequences.
It's mad, Larry, because I see bodybuilders the same way I see boxers. Like, they come from the same place but express it differently. Once those guys get to about 18, 19 stone, they feel no one's going to mess with them, so that muscle becomes a suit of armor. And so with me, when I see guys like that, if I'm on holiday, if I'm in the gym, if I see them and they're trying to intimidate me, I know hand on heart, I'm like, this guy's got no heart. And I'm one of those, okay, let me just keep peeling these layers away until we find out who's that inner child that he's trying to protect. It's the same in boxing. You train these kids, I don't care what area they come from, Hackney, Brixton, they all talk tough until you're stood in front of them and you're not going anywhere. And all the little confidence tricks they have don't work, and then you see the truth. So a lot of these bodybuilders, they never downsize because they're scared of being small again. But listen, when have you ever seen a 20 stone pensioner? You don't.
No. No.
Small people live long.
Yeah. That's it's been studied very well. Because at the end of the day, what people need to understand is whether you're 20 stone of muscle or 20 stone of fat, your body just sees you as 20 stone.
Yeah.
In fact, there's arguments to say the 20 stone of fat is even healthier, because if you've got 20 stone of muscle, you're going to have to feed that muscle with lots of blood. And if you don't have, if your body's not good at making extra capillaries and whatnot to feed those muscles, then it's not going to go well for you, So yeah, as you said, the bigger you are, the more susceptible you are to dying early. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact that you cannot get, you can't get away from, and it's all about mitigating it. And a lot of guys have been very good at mitigating it because they're thinking health first. And a lot of guys haven't been good at mitigating it because they didn't give a crap about their health, and all they thought about was being as big as possible and staying big no matter what. Like you said, you can't. There's lots of bodybuilders in their 50s that are still doing this thing, but a lot of them are doing it responsibly. There's a lot of guys who are using TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, and then in between that, they'll go on a little blast, to creep up in size, go back on their TRT, and they always get themselves monitored. And like you said in the beginning of this, it's imperative for people to get their blood work. Not just their blood work, but their organ imaging as well, which is people don't think about. They need to get their heart, their lungs, their kidneys, their liver. They need to get those imaged, And I know it's a lot of hassle, but if you're going to indulge in these things, this is what you have to do, to stay healthy. And a lot of guys just don't want to do it. A lot of guys don't want to do it. you know. And like you said, it is 100% exactly what you said. It's a security thing, you know. They've got a lot of guys have gotten big because they have insecurities. They were bullied, or you know, they were skinny and whatnot, or they didn't get girls because they were skinny or whatever. And they've got the size now, and that's their security blanket. That's, you know, and that's their, you know, that gives them their security, and so they don't want to lose that. And that's why I've got to rate someone like Dorian Yates, who was able to downsize so much. And he explained it. You know, he's been interviewed so many times, and he's just like, well, right, I came in, I did what I wanted to do, and I'm finished with it. And so, well, I don't need to be that big anymore. What was the point? You know, so you know, he downsized really, you know, tremendously, and he's living a very healthy life now.
But he is still big, though.
Do you know what? He looks. I think he looks big because he's still got his definition. But I don't think he's big. He actually looks more like a normal person now.
Didn't he say like he was over 200 pounds though?
I think he might be close to 200 pounds.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's over. Because I think he's about 5'10", 5'11". So he's not a small guy, but at the same time, I think if he was to hold 200 pounds, he'd still look like a normal guy in clothes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other area that I look at, Larry, if I'm being honest with you, the other area that I look at, I go, football is the next one where we're going to have to start doing a deep dive. I'll tell you what confirmed that.
What did you just say?
Football.
Oh, right.
Yeah. When I saw Christian Eriksen go down, and I was like, whoo, somebody got the medication wrong. That had all the red flags to it. And people said, you're just, I mean, you're suspicious of everyone. And I said, no. I said, Christian Eriksen plays for Inter Milan. Italian football clubs are notorious for monitoring players.
Mm-hmm.
They will check your heart. They will check everything because they're always looking for those marginal gains. I said, he's at a football club that at some point would have had to check his heart. If he had a pre-existing heart condition, they would have found it. Mm-hmm. You should not be having a heart attack as a football player that the club is not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, in that case, what happened? And
so I think that's a combination of performance-enhancing drug use and also recreational drug use. Because as we both know, footballers are one of the worst when it comes to recreational drug use. I had a friend of mine who used to sell the gas canisters to a lot of these footballers, and let me tell you, he made a tremendous amount of money. He made a tremendous amount of money selling to these football players. I mean, his clientele were literally exclusively footballers. Yeah, and I've heard that there was a doctor who jumped from football to the cyclists, the British cycling team, who used to sort out all the footballers with their performance-enhancing drug needs, and then he went to the cycling, and then because there was a big investigation about cycling not too long ago, the British cycling, should I say, anyway, and they found out that this doctor was working for the cycling team for the longest time, so they were like, well, he was known. Even though he never got caught, but he was known. A lot of footballers came out and said, yes, he did this, he did that. So, why is he then working with the British cycling team? So, it's football has always been one of the dirtiest sports, but it's just that you don't hear about it because football makes too much money. There's too much money at stake, way too much money at stake, and the footballers who you always see footballers get injured and come straight back from injury. That's not a coincidence, there's a reason why, and they are well looked after by the doctors, and that's all part of performance enhancing drug protocol that they have to take. But that's why a lot of them go to Germany, for instance, because they know they can get shot up full of the Actovagin, which actually isn't banned. But it's a grey area. Well, it's not a grey area because it's not banned, but but people will still frown on you using that, even though it's not banned, which is very weird. But yeah, a lot of the sprinters used to do that as well. They'll go to a certain doctor in Germany and get the Actovegin, and in fact, Tiger Woods did that as well, as far as I remember. And with the growth hormone, and you'll come back from injury in days instead of weeks. You know, there's so many substances now. In fact, there's one substance. Just to go on a quick tangent, there's a substance called BPC 157, body protection compound. That is one of the most healing substances known to man right now. You know, that's not banned. That's not banned at all.
Isn't it? Is it one of the substances under supervision by WADA though?
It might be under supervision now, but if it is, it's only very, very recently. Because it and it shouldn't really even be under suspicion. If you're gonna, because it heals injuries super fast. You know, I've seen guys tear ACLs, and you know they're gonna be out for 6 months, and I kid you not, they're back within 2 months.
So is that site specific, or is it just subcutaneous anyway?
It is site specific, but it does get systemic. I mean, you try to get it at the site, but it will go systemic at you know, at certain points. But yeah, it for the most part, it's site specific, and yeah, that's if you're saying that it's under supervision, it's still not banned, so people can still use it. But I mean, this is one of the many things that are still, you know, still out there, and people are using. I mean, there's another one called TB 500, which is banned, which is another healing peptide, but again, it can't be tested for. So banning it is irrelevant. Like, when have you? I mean, it's been around for years. How many people have you heard being caught for TB 500? No one. So, you know, it's like I remember when they first, it's very similar to when they first banned growth hormone. They never caught anyone with growth hormone for years. It's only recently they started catching people with growth hormone. And even then, it's still really hard to catch people with growth hormone. So as long as you don't get tested around your time of administration, you're good.
Yeah, you could literally have the guy come in and be like, mate, I can't take a pee. You could inject it, sit on the toilet for an hour while he's watching. Well, you have to inject it before you got there, but you can sit on the toilet for an hour. It's gone, and you just go, right, there you go. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy because I look at football, and like I said, as a result of the last episode, the stuff I hear in football, that it's, how can I put it? You're never told to do it, but you're encouraged to see Dr. X or Dr. Y. Yeah. And then what he'll say is, so you need testosterone. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you, I don't even know what they'll give you, even if it's the Deca or Tren, crash your testosterone production. Yeah, you come back with your test, like they'll test you again and go, oh my God, look how low my testosterone level is. I can't produce any naturally. Oh, okay, we'll get you a TUE. Here's all the evidence we need. There's your TUE. By that point, you reactivate and all that sort of stuff. And then you can just keep taking the stuff for as long as you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of footballers have that. Like, look at Liverpool. Like, I saw the video on Twitter and it was so funny. The guy was saying something like 2/3 of the Liverpool squad are identified as asthmatic. And I was just like...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, funnily enough, that happened a long time ago with the Santa Monica Track Club as well. In the 80s, with Carl Lewis was part of that. They were all, Leroy Burrell, all of them. They were all like that as well. They were all had asthma. They all had braces on, which we know because they were taking growth hormone. You know, it was just ridiculous. Like, and you know the statistics. Like, what is it that they say? It's only like 17% of the public have asthma, but yet 70% of the Liverpool football team has asthma. Like, what are we trying to find athletes here or what? Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I think they did the same study for the cyclists as well. I think they had a whole load of people who had asthma as well. For
Yeah.
a sport that you need great stamina for, all these people have asthma now. Like,
And heart
it
conditions and high blood pressure.
right. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Do you know when I was a
At
kid,
all.
Larry? I always wanted a Santa Monica Track Club T-shirt. Do you know when you'd see that top
Yeah.
and you're like, that was the coolest top in athletics?
It was, and all the fastest guys in the world were from there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know, 100%. I definitely want one.
I miss those days of those sort, because no one really has that anymore. You don't really get the track clubs.
Nah.
On a side note, have you seen this young girl? Like, you know, I don't know. I may cause controversy here, right? So there's a white girl from the University of Kentucky, Larry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think she's running in the NCAA 4x400.
Okay.
She takes the baton, she's fourth. Like, she's losing 25 to 50 meters on the two ladies in front. Like, remember, this is, you know, it's sprinting. So it's a virtually all black female field, right?
Mm-hmm.
This white lady, I think it's Abby Shields is her name. I've never seen someone run. It looked like everyone just started running backwards. And I looked at her and I said, if they've got her on stuff, you couldn't even tell. No musculature to speak of, nothing. This girl looked like the girl that would serve you in Tesco's. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, whatever vasodilators and EPO and stuff they put into her,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she's got Dr. Wheatos or something. She's got a hell of a chemist there.
Well, you see, this is the thing as well. Like, a lot of people assume, oh, you have to be, you know, bristling with muscles to be. Oh, yeah, he or she's on performance enhancing drugs. Not so. I mean, even sprinters. How many sprinters have we seen? I mean, Usain Bolt wasn't the most muscular guy. Do you know what I mean? Compared to some of the other sprinters. And look what he did. You know, and you look at some of the cyclists. They're on a boatload of stuff. In fact, I would argue that cyclists are even on more stuff than bodybuilders. And yet, look how skinny they are. You know, it doesn't correlate that. Oh, you know, you have lots of muscle mass, so therefore you're on PEDs. It doesn't always go like that. It all depends on specific needs of the sport. And then on top of that, it all depends on people's genetic response as well.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, like with sprinting, like 400 meters, for instance, because that's a long sprint, an EPO would be just as advantageous as any anabolic steroid would be. And especially for a woman who doesn't want to suffer any androgenic effects,
Ooh.
you know, male characteristics.
Or even injectable ATP.
Or even that. Or even L-carnitine. You know, I don't know if L-carnitine is now being looked at or is they trying to ban it. But up until very recently, because if you remember, Mo Farah was using this. This was
the
all
Oregon
like,
Project.
Yeah, exactly. He was using it. So for the longest time, that wasn't banned. But I tell you this now, and I've tried injectable L-carnitine. It makes a massive difference. It makes a massive. Don't be surprised if a lot of boxers are on that injectable L-carnitine.
Yeah.
I only found out about injectable L-carnitine after my boxing career. I tell you what, if I was still boxing now, that would be one of the foremost things that would be on my protocol. And it's not even really a drug. It's an amino acid, just injectable form.
Yeah, because I think.
But it makes up. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, so the WADA rules are you can take it orally, but not in injectable form.
So they must have just changed that very recently.
I think they got wise to it.
And that must be because of the Oregon Project thing. So they've changed that within the last 2 years then.
Yeah, and so once you start talking about stuff like this, injectable this, injectable that, you could even talk about injectable SARMs. Now you're moving into this realm where people are like, oh, I'd never thought of it like that. Because a lot of people just think of it in terms of steroids. It's like, nah. There are a lot of clever people reading a lot of research and they go, oh, okay, we can do it this way. But it's crazy because
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say it's crazy because when you look at that whole Olympic thing, everyone's just getting smarter and smarter in what they do. Like we're going to talk about boxing in a second, but like if you look at the young American boxer Virginia Fuchs, who got done for GW 50-15-16, and her excuse, if you remember, was my boyfriend was taking it and I caught it during sex, almost like it was herpes.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell? That almost reminds me of, I don't know you because you're from my era. Do you remember when Dennis Mitchell got caught
Yes.
with excessive testosterone levels? And his excuse was, I drank a whole load of beer and I banged my wife a few times, and that's why my testosterone levels are excessive. That's the kind of stupid excuse that...
And it's counter-scientific as well, if you think about it, because if you were having that much sex, your prolactin would be through the roof, therefore your test would be through the floor.
Exactly. But then moving on to this girl that you said, because I don't even know who this is, but she's saying, so she caught it through sex, right?
Through sex, and she got done for letrozole as well.
Well, there you go.
So her boyfriend was taking a breast cancer drug and a SARM. What doctor prescribed this exactly?
Thank you. It was utter nonsense.
How do you prescribe? Because she said the doctor prescribed these substances. I'm like, well, one of them's a research chemical, not suitable for humans.
Which no doctor is going to prescribe because, like you said, it's a research chemical.
And the other one's a breast cancer drug. Like,
yeah, letrozole. I don't even know why she'd be using that, because I know why men use it, but why she would? I mean, she could be using it if she wanted to bring down her body fat levels, because obviously it helps with that. But it'd be a harsh way to do that for a female.
A lot of women do that. So a lot of women go anti-estrogen. They don't even go inhibition. It's full estrogen block, so they can cut weight down.
Yeah, I mean, to do it acutely might not be too dangerous, but to do it chronically, it's quite dangerous for a woman anyway.
A lot of this stuff is.
Yeah. But again, you see, who's advising these people? Because, GW501516, or otherwise known as cardarine, it's an okay enhanced endurance enhancer, but it's nothing special. And furthermore, it's easy to test for. So I don't understand why people will be using any SARM for that matter. It's all easy to test for. SARMs are easy to test for. The only reason SARMs were popular was because at one point they couldn't be tested for because they were like a designer drug. No one knew about them. Only the athletes who were using them knew about them. In fact, they were popular among athletes in the 2008 Olympics. That's when a lot of people, I'm not going to mention any names because we don't want to get sued, but yeah, I think you know who we're talking about. A lot of athletes are using this because they weren't tested for, because they didn't know anything about them. And then obviously after that Olympics, they did start to find out about them and develop tests for them. But yeah, SARMs are, there's no point in using. I don't understand why people are getting caught with SARMs. If you are a tested athlete, I don't understand why you would use SARMs. I don't even understand why you'd use SARMs if you're male. If you're female, I can understand very much why you'd use SARMs. But for a male, it's not that effective. And also, it lowers your testosterone levels. So it kind of defeats the purpose, you know?
So here's the thing. My theory on it is people are scared to pin. Yeah. A lot of people are just scared to inject.
But then you could take oral anabolic steroids. There's many oral anabolic steroids like, Anapolon, you got Oxandrolone, you got Dianabol, Winstrol. There's many oral anabolics. So why would you use SARMs as a man? For a female, I completely get why you use. Well, if you're an untested female, that is, and you don't want to get too many androgenic effects, I can understand why you use SARMs. But for a male, it just doesn't make sense to me. And you're right. There probably is some truth in what you're saying. But then why would you go that route? You know what I mean? It's unintelligent drug use, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, if you're going to take a SARM, you may as well take some testo gel or something, right?
Yeah, perfect example. Go and do that. That'd be better. I mean, that'd be better for you than a farm, 100%.
But a lot of these people are just, it's just backyard doping. If you look at the people who failed tests, rarely do they have a machine behind them. Like, so there's Virginia Fuchs, the US boxer who fell for letrozole and cardarine. You know that was her boyfriend going, I take this, look what it's done for me, you take it. She's like, yeah, okay. No real thought to, because you can't take something off your boyfriend and go to the doctor, because then the doctor has to declare it.
Yeah.
So she's got to keep her mouth shut. And then,
exactly,
on the subject of SARMs, you saw that Philip Bowes has been banned for 4 years for Ostarine. And I laughed when I saw that.
Yeah, and it's, as I said to you before we started this show, I didn't know about that. I actually know Philip Bowes. I actually know him very well. He's very good friends with my brother. We boxed together in Repton, so I know him very well. But I don't speak to him very often because obviously we're not in the same circles anymore. But that was a surprising one. I didn't know about that until you showed me that earlier today. And I mean, I read quite quickly that his excuse was that it was contaminated supplements. And I don't know what to think, man, because to be honest with you, there are I'm not going to lie, there are some supplements that have been tainted with SARMs because they're made in the same factory. No doubt about that. But I think in this day and age, especially with the awareness that there is about all this, it's very hard for an athlete to argue that.
Yeah,
and hence why he got banned. You know, it's in the athlete's interest to make sure that your supplements are not tainted. So I don't know where. I mean, personally, I like Philip, and you know, me personally, as you know, through my history and whatnot, I've got no problem with athletes using performance enhancing drugs. That's not a problem for me. So if he felt that he had to use that, fair enough. But he should have chose something more conducive to what he needs instead of just picking up something that you can get. Here's another thing about these SARMs. A lot of reasons why athletes are going after these things is because you can get them over the counter. Whereas if it was anabolic steroids, you'd have to either go to a doctor or you'd have to go to someone in the gym that you knew. You know, it's not so straightforward. But I could literally go on the internet now and order SARMs and have it in my house the next day. You know, it's that easy. It's not seen as shady like it is, like some people would think anabolic steroids is. You know.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's just a bit of fun. It's almost like that's the mainstream way to dope now, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's gonna bite a lot of people in the arse who don't have anyone to advise them because, like as I said, it's very easy to test for. And for men, it's not just that it's not effective enough. I mean, you know, anything that lowers your testosterone levels but can't replicate the effects in the body of those testosterone levels is not going to do you any good. And I know there's many SARMs which vary in strength, but I mean, as far as I know, the strongest SARM right now is S23, and even S23 doesn't have the androgenic capability of testosterone, which means that even when you take it and it brings down your own testosterone levels, it's not going to replace the androgenic effects of that testosterone, which means you're not going to get the benefit. You're going to be lethargic and whatnot, and it's just going to defeat the purpose of using it.
And you imagine with someone like Philip, it was like, once again, another example of just sort of backyard doping. Like someone just said, take this. You jump on a forum, it says, mate, 0 side effects, take it for as long as you want. Which is never the case, by the way. Like once you start playing around with your body's pathways and stuff, you start messing up with feedback loops. Because a lot of times you don't know what this is going to hit. Like no one knows with 100% certainty every pathway Ostarine hits, and then every follow-on pathway that those pathways hit. Yeah.
And hence why you said at the beginning of all of this, and we'll keep reiterating it for everyone, if you are going to go down this path, blood work is a necessity. I mean, I would even say even if you weren't using performance enhancing drugs, blood work, especially when you get to a certain age, like I'm over 40 now, I would say I get blood work very regularly, at least twice a year, if not more. But I get blood work to make sure everything is still A-OK. So even if you're not using performance enhancing drugs, I would recommend blood work. But if you are going to use performance enhancing drugs, even if you're doing a TRT thing, I mean, obviously, if you're doing TRT with a doctor's supervision, your doctor will be doing that for you anyway. But, a lot of people don't, because the NHS is rubbish when it comes to that. A lot of people are doing their own TRT, so they're not getting doctor supervised, and so therefore they're not getting their blood work done. And it is. I know if you get it done privately, it costs a little bit, maybe a couple of £100, but it is worth it. It is worth it because, as you said, there's so many things that's going on in the body, and especially if you're not on top of your health to begin with before you start this stuff, you don't know what it's doing. I mean, for instance, people go on testosterone and they haven't had blood work beforehand, so they don't know that, for instance, they have a high hematocrit level. Yeah. So if you've got a high hematocrit level and then you're pumping testosterone, even if it's not a lot of testosterone into your system, that hematocrit could jump too high, and then all of a sudden you have a stroke, which could have been prevented, if you knew what your hematocrit was beforehand.
But it's crazy. That's why, you know what? When I see certain people around boxers, it worries me, but it also at least reassures me that, well, that's a guy who kind of knows his stuff, right? And you know who I'm talking about, the ex-runner.
Mm-hmm,
but we won't mention names this time because that made it hot for me last time.
Me too, bro. Me too.
But you didn't really throw anyone under the bus, though. I did. I
didn't. Yeah. No, you're right.
I did because there was a name that was given to me afterwards, right? And because he's one of my heroes, I can't even bring myself to say it. But the guy who told me was like, nope, I know for absolute certain that between this period and this period, he was on everything.
Mm-hmm.
One of the British boxing greats.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say no more.
Yeah.
On the other subject of British boxing greats, you seen Ricky Hatton's weight loss?
Have I seen Ricky Hatton's what, sorry?
His weight loss.
Oh, yeah. It's Ricky Hatton. I remember when I got caught and he was quick to pipe up and say some crap. And I really wanted to throw him under the bus, but I mean, I wouldn't go into detail about what he was doing. But as I've mentioned many times, Ricky Hatton is known in his career to use performance enhancing drugs. He was actually caught twice that I know of. But obviously it was swept under the carpet. And that's a name I don't mind mentioning because a lot of people know about this already, and I've got no loyalty to the person. So Ricky Hatton, he knows what he has to do, to lose the weight at his age, especially. Because that's another thing a lot of people don't seem to understand. Like they could say, "Oh yeah, but he knows he knows how to lose weight and blah blah blah." Yeah, he might know how to lose weight, but the older you get, the much harder it is to do it without any substances. So, when a guy can get down to what he and let's be honest, Ricky Hatton has not lived the healthiest lifestyle since he retired from boxing. Hence why he got so fat. And we're not just talking about food either. We're talking about recreational drugs and whatever else. So for him to lose the weight that he lost, obviously he's had a little bit of an assistance, and well done to him. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just stating facts. That's all.
So what's going to be interesting is his exhibition has been pushed from the 2nd of July to November. So let's see if he maintains this new slimline physique until then.
Oh, he will. He will. He knows what he has to do. He knows what he has to do.
Well, you'll see him blow up. Watch. August time, you'll see Ricky Hatton with that round face. And then...
You think so?
Yeah.
You don't think he's going to maintain it?
If he could, he would have done for ages, right? He would have done. You look at Carl Froch, and you're like, There's a guy who's always kept himself in shape. David Hay always kept himself in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there are guys who just partly genetic, partly lifestyle. They can keep themselves in shape. Ricky Hatton's not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not like Mike. You know, when Mike Tyson did that exhibition, and you knew he was smoking hot.
Mike. Do you know what though? Mike's managed to keep in shape. You know, obviously we know he's had assistance as well. We're not silly, but you know, he's managed to keep it going, which is good.
Look, whatever people say, as you get older, cardiovascular fitness is a good indicator of your life chances.
Yes, 100%.
Just doing cardio is good for longevity. The gym's good for being able to do stuff as you get older, but cardio is good for getting older.
Yeah. I mean, you need both. Yeah. You know, there's so many studies now that show that, you know, the more muscle mass that you have, you're more insulin sensitive, you know, which helps with so many other things as well. But as you said as well, the cardiovascular health, obviously we know it helps with, you know, strokes, risk of strokes, risk of heart attacks, your cholesterol levels. Also helps with insulin sensitivity, so prevents diabetes and whatnot. So yeah, it's all you know, they all go hand in hand with each other. But yeah, you need. I think that, you know what, the older you get, because there's more studies that, because like my mum is almost 70 now, and I'm trying to get her into. Well, she does go to the gym, but I'm trying to get her to do more weight training, because obviously there's plenty of studies that show that the older you get, the more muscle mass and bone mass that you lose. And to reverse that, you need to do resistance training, weight training. So everything has its place, you know. There's that side of things, but like you said, there's also the cardiovascular side of things as well, because that's the systems to malfunction if you're not doing your cardio as you get older. So yeah.
It's also, I don't know if you've been seeing this on Instagram, and you see a lot of these ladies in their 60s now. Pull-ups.
Yeah.
Repping on the pull-ups. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they these are the ladies that are probably on the Psalms.
They're probably on the testo gel. They're like, oh, I've had my kids, whatever.
Well, you know, the Psalms would be great for those kind of ladies, because those ladies, like Psalms, especially the not so strong ones like your Osterine, they don't have androgenic effects, or if they do, they don't have it to a large extent. So a woman won't have to worry about getting male traits with something like Osterine, for instance. So that would benefit a woman greatly, you know, without having to worry too much about side effects. And even though testosterone is natural, you'd have to have an expert there to know which kind of dosing, especially with the gel, would be good for a woman. Otherwise, it could go out of hand. Whereas you won't have to worry about that with the Psalms. But yeah, I would wager that a lot of older women now, as you said, on Instagram doing their fitness stuff, they're using these things because there's been an influx of them lately. I mean, there was even one, I don't know if you saw her a little while ago, but it was this really old white lady. She must have been in her 70s. And they showed her a few years previous when she was fat and out of shape. And, you know, the doctor said she's going to die if she doesn't get in shape. And then they showed her a few years later. And she's just muscular, like scary muscular, with definition and everything. I don't know if you saw that.
I've seen a few like that. There's a few of them. Like, they have these like over 60s bodybuilding shows now.
Yeah.
You can't make it up, can you? But you know what I did see, Larry? I saw this guy. He's got to be 62 or 63 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Did reps, 250 kilos.
On what exercise?
Squats.
Wow.
Just wow. You know,
that's commendable for two things, for two reasons. One, the actual weight, because that's a tremendous amount of weight. But two, the fact that at 62, his hips and knees still hold up to throwing that kind of weight around.
Bro, that's those Caribbean genes, man. They don't fail.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's amazing, man.
But this is almost what it's weird, isn't it? That like, so it's the paradox of doping. The fact that people can take these compounds actually reveals who the genetic freaks are.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point, actually. That's a very good point.
Because that guy, 62, you're repping like that. You're a genetic freak, irrespective of the drugs, whatever. You're a genetic freak.
Genetic freak, of course, 100%.
100%. We haven't talked about the elephant in the room. Literally the elephant in the room, Jarrell Miller.
Jarrell Miller. I've heard he's a really nice guy, actually. You know, I've heard he's a really nice guy. Jarrell Miller, I just think he's been. I think he because I heard that he works out in the same gym that Flex Lewis works out in. I hear that he knows Flex Lewis quite well. So it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Flex Lewis had a hand or he was giving advice to him on what to take. Hence why he was taking what he was taking, because any tested athlete would know that that's not stuff you would take. You know, as we spoke about before, you know, cardering is very easy to test for.
Yeah. How do you pop twice for cardering?
Yeah, for cardering, of all things. You know, it's just, yeah. I forgot you popped twice. Yeah, you're right.
Pop twice?
It's, yeah. I mean, what he should be worrying about is losing some damn weight first. You know? He should be losing some weight. It's just, I mean, he's over 300 pounds. I mean, if he lost some weight, if he lost about 50 pounds, you know, it will do his performance a world of good. So much so that he might not even need performance enhancing drugs for certain fights. I don't know. I don't know
what we said before. Sometimes, as the bigger they are, the more scared they are. Yeah.
That could definitely be the case right here. But I mean, with him, you would think that you know, because he's fat. Let's get it right. You know, he ain't 300 pounds of muscle. He's just 300 pounds and he's very fat. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if his body fat percentage is 30%. You know, which for an athlete is disgusting. So, you know, he I don't know who's advising him, but he needs to sort it out. He really needs to sort it out. I mean, if you are going to do your performance enhancing drugs, you need to get a protocol off of someone who knows what they're doing. It's as simple as that. And then, you know, that should, I think, if any athletes who are thinking about using performance enhancing drugs are listening to this, that's the biggest thing you should take from this. If you are going to use performance enhancing drugs, get advice from people who know what they're talking about. Do not go to any Tom, Dick, and Harry or the biggest guy in the gym or any guy that's got access to stuff. Just, you know, it doesn't work like that. If you're a performance athlete getting tested, you need to know and get advice off of someone who knows how to circumvent testing and who knows what substances to use. You know,
and also knows your sport, knows the demands of your sport. That's probably even more important, because I think Jarrell Miller's problem is he probably took advice off a bodybuilder guy. Oh, you want to get big? You got to do this. As opposed to being around someone who may have helped other athletes in boxing, who would have said, actually, drop the weight. Yeah. Take this to improve your muscular contractility so you can actually generate more power. Take this to improve your neuromuscular transmitters and all that sort of stuff. You know, the things where someone actually knows what you need. Mm-hmm. And he could have got more bang for his buck and probably been harder to catch doping.
Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, when you're around people whose sport doesn't even require testing, the only solution they have is just don't be there when the testers are there.
Yeah. Which isn't always easy. I mean, it might be easier to do that in America, because I know their testing's not that stringent unless you're with VADA, and even then, there's ways to get around that. But yeah, over here you have to give your whereabouts, and they, so they need to know where you are all the time. So if they need to surprise you for a test, they can. Yeah, it's crazy.
Or you do what some of these boxers do and go, I want to make it so expensive for you to come and get me. Like you're going to see my name on the list, see the whereabouts, and go, we ain't got the budget this month.
Well, that's why certain people have their training camps out of the country, isn't it? We won't name names this time, but I think we know who we're talking about. Certain people who fought recently for the heavyweight title.
And in a way, that's why I give Joshua credit, right? This is one time I'm going to just tip my hat off to AJ. Never rescinded his license. He stays licensed as a boxer 365 days a year. Has his training base where everyone knows where to find him. Even the university students know where to find him, as we found out. And he's always available. Now, whether you can have a diktat that says, how about we just leave him alone? I don't know. Yeah. But I've heard things to the effect that there's a list of people that UCAD will not bother. Yeah. Because it's uneconomic to do so. As they found out with Dillian, it gets very expensive when people lawyer up.
Exactly. I suspect that's what they've done with Anthony Joshua. It wouldn't surprise me if they are testing him, but also he has great protocol. I mean, he's got the money to be able to hire whoever the hell he wants to be able to make sure that he passes any test. But it's either one of the two. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the cash cows of the sport, and this goes to any sport, are not to be touched. Or if they are tested, they're tested in a way that everyone knows, that they should be able to pass.
Yeah, you might just get a text message that says, listen, make sure the laundry's clean on Wednesday.
Right. Something as cryptic as, it's as simple as that. It makes me laugh when I go back to the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather fight, when he was caught using over 50 mil of liquid IV, which is against the rules, which is a doping violation. And what did they do? They swept that aside and said, "Yeah, we don't class that as a doping violation." When in the rule book, it's quite clear that that's a doping violation. But they're like, we don't recognize that in Vegas.
Oh, how much money do we lose if this fight's cancelled?
Yeah, exactly.
The hell no.
Yeah, that's money talks at the end of the day. That's money talk.
And that's what people need to realize. As much as they want to say their hero's clean, your hero just hasn't been caught.
Yeah. Or it's been caught, but it's been swept into the carpet,
It's like you and I talked about this, where I was like, if you look at the UCAD list, the number of rugby players who aren't professional that failed drugs tests, and they fail for real barnyard drugs, like nandrolone. Do you know what I mean? Like real caveman drugs. And you're looking and you're like, but you guys aren't even very good. So what are the good guys taking? Then people say, oh, he was rubbish, so he had to take drugs to be this good. I'm like, no, his job is very simple. It requires nothing but strength and power. So what have you guys got? I don't want to hear this, oh, he's a genetic one-off. He's not. You know what I mean? What are you guys taking and how are you getting away with it?
Right. And anyone, I know you know this already, but lots of people will tell you rugby is one of the dirtiest sports going. It's only literally the last 10, 15 years they stepped up testing for rugby. And just like boxing, they've now quelled it down a little bit because they're realizing they're catching a bit too many people. So now they're directing that testing towards the lower levels as they're doing with boxing, to catch these guys and make them scapegoats to show that they're doing something when, you know, you and I both know that
Not doing anything.
that's not the case.
Did you see the thing about the South African rugby? Where they're talking about the schoolboy rugby?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, my headline was South Africa has steroid problem in schoolboy rugby.
Really?
Yeah, they reckon like something like 1/3 of South African rugby players are juicing. Schoolboys.
That's probably a conservative number. I think it's more than that.
Yeah. And you know, because you see these kids and you're like, I wasn't like that at that age.
Yeah.
And I was strong. I know I was strong, but I was never built like that.
Mm. But it's like anything. I mean, you look at some of these other sports and with the backgrounds of some of these children. I mean, we know how poor a lot of these children are in South Africa, and it's like, this is my one chance to get out of the ghetto.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take whatever the hell I have to take to do that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's the same thing even happens in America with the NFL, the NBA, all of that. They're all on stuff. You know, from a young age, from high school, they all want to make the professional teams. They all want to make the big colleges to get scholarships. You know, so they're going to do what they feel that they have to do. You know, and whether they have to do that at an early age, they don't care. That's what they have to do. And you know, when you see what the backgrounds of these people, you can't blame them. Can't blame them for that. You know, they're just trying to make it out and make a better life for themselves, just like anyone else is trying to.
And it was crazy because I look at it, when I look at this whole thing and people ask me to explain doping to them, and I say that like it's a continuum. So if you look at doping 1.0, and it was literally you take stuff that's designed to make you big. That's really all people ever did, right? Pop some down in a bowl, whatever, and you trained and you ate. And then we hit 2.0, and that was when stuff like growth hormone kicked in. And sort of tail end of 2.0 was with the SARMs and stuff. We're in this interesting phase now because we're somewhere between 2.0 and 3.0, where now it's really about targeting receptor sites, it's about targeting pathways, as opposed to just take all of this stuff. Like there's a real, when you hear stuff being discussed, like there's a real structure to whatever stack it is you're taking. It's like, right, this is going to work on your beta receptors on your estrogen, that's going to work on your androgen receptors, this is going to stimulate your somatic system. You know, where it's really like, with this phase now where people are just trying to say, right, how can we be more efficient with what we're putting into these athletes? And which I find interesting, and we've seen it more as we've sort of broadened out the sports that can make you either wealthy or famous. And you know, because it's obviously all of this really started with bodybuilders and American footballers, right? But if you look at bodybuilding now, we talked about it earlier, like the women are the women are on everything, man. Like you know what I mean? You've got women. So there's different levels to it, from what I understand. So the newbies, it's like, you know, we call them the 5 milligram girls, right? 5 milligrams of Anavar a day or whatever it is they're taking now, and they'll see something, and then as they grow, they realize actually this 5 milligrams isn't going to get me to that next level. And then some of them go to 20 milligrams. Now, the thing with Anavars, it's a harsh oral. So a lot of women go, well, how do I get the effects for less hassle? And then you start to delve into the low doses of testosterone. This is what happens in bodybuilding. So as you move up the levels, more and more testosterone. And then you see the women who are bigger than you. The ones with the ones with the weird voices. Like, it's almost like it's been dubbed over by a 14-year-old boy. Which I don't mean that disrespectfully, I mean almost factually. And then they're the ones on the Primo and the Tren and the Deca, and you're like, that. I always call that the red zone. Like, once you're there, you ain't coming back. And it's crazy because, like, and it's all scientific, and it's talking about, well, actually, you can't just take this. You need to take your insulin to potentiate the environment, make sure you got all the right things moving at the right speed. And so there are people who can really break all of this down to a fine art. And you see it a lot with CrossFitters. That's the sport for me where it was almost like, well, traditionally we make power athletes big. That's what seems to work. But with CrossFitters, you have to be strong and mobile. So they've almost found a different sweet spot for the CrossFitters now, which is also interesting because their testing regime is absolutely terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yet don't you find it weird? I don't know if you go on Instagram and see every CrossFitter has like 100,000 followers. And I'm like, it can't be that popular a sport.
Yeah, CrossFit's a weird one. I don't think it is that popular. I think it's got its fans, obviously, as any niche sport would have. But I think a lot of it is an amalgamation of like bodybuilding fans and, you know, some other sports fans and, you know, that kind of thing. But I think it's more of a curiosity more than anything, because you know you see these jack girls who look sort of feminine still, and it's like, how the hell did they get that? And you know, and they all got abs, you know, like shredded abs, and you know, and they all claiming natural. It's just comical to me. You know, I think I really take your point on CrossFit, and you're right in that, especially with the females, how the polypharmacy to keep them jacked the way they are, but to keep them looking female, because they actually still look very feminine. I have to say, how they've done that it's a very fine art. I think that it's a very fine art. So whoever is doing their protocols they're doing a very good job, actually. I have to say, because the pictures I see of these CrossFit women, I mean, the man, you know, it's not really, you know, to see a jacked male doing CrossFit, that's by the by, you know. But to see jacked women, not just being jacked, but being jacked and feminine, it's polypharmacy at its finest.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Like,
although some of them, if you've noticed, Larry, I think some are getting to that line where you're going to hit the red zone. I think there's an Australian girl, what's her name? Tia Toomey. And I look at her and I go, you can't do this for many more years, because at some point, like, a lot of these androgenic effects are going to harden on you and you ain't going to be able to roll it back.
Yeah. And that's the risk that a lot of these women run when they are using anabolic steroids. And again, that's that. Like I said, there's so many drugs out there now that a woman can use that can increase her performance, and she wouldn't need to use anabolic steroids. And even if she did need to use anabolic steroids, we know so much more about these anabolic steroids now that there's no. If I ever hear of a woman using Tren and Deca and all of these stupid drugs that were stupid for a woman anyway, I certify them as crazy. Honestly, why a woman would want to risk her health and her femininity for that is just beyond me. When there's so many other choices nowadays. I mean, back in the day, you could say, okay, these are the only choices women have, but you know, the game has moved on, and there's so many. I mean, we spoke about just to be generous to people who are listening to this. I'll give you one example of how a woman can improve her performance without having to use anabolic steroids. So we spoke about how SARMs are very effective for women, especially the weaker SARMs, like Ostarine, which doesn't cause androgenic effects in women, but still acts on the androgen receptor. And then we've also spoken about injectable L-carnitine, which is a fantastic performance enhancer, even though it's not a drug. It's an amino acid, but injected, it increases the fat going to the mitochondria for energy. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about, but it's been studied extensively, and you can read about these studies in any scientific journal, it increases androgen receptors. So you could use a very low dose of ostarine and potentiate its effects by using injectable L-carnitine to the point where you could get steroid-like effects but no side effects. So this is all polypharmacy that we're talking about, you know. So I'm just giving them a little tip. I was giving you females who are listening a little tip there. You know what I mean? You're welcome. But you know, that's one way of doing things. But there's so many other different combinations and compounds and stuff that women could do that it will not harm them, you know, and not create androgenic effects. But it just seems like women just, or women are either being advised badly, or they just doing their own protocols and they don't really pay any attention to what they're doing. You know.
Just tapping into sort of bits that I know. And actually, one of the things I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, the size of women bodybuilders who are winning competitions has gone down. So if you think back to the days of like Iris Kyle, and Iris Kyle was quite small for a bodybuilder. If you think about it, she'd be on stage at 163, 165 pounds.
Yeah.
And there are women walking on there at 180. They're not the most conditioned, but they're walking on there at 180. But now you've got women going on stage winning bodybuilding shows down in the 150s. Which is showing you that there's a definite sea change, because those women like Iris Kyle, for anyone who listens to this in America, if you can get to Vegas, have a look at Iris Kyle. If you see her in the flesh, because Instagram hides a lot of things. If you see her in the flesh, like her face is like the moon. Like it's ravaged. I think she's got fillers in her cheeks, and like they've had to put fillers in her face to make it look remotely feminine, because it just hardened up. You know, you get the enlarged cheek muscles and all that sort of stuff when you take these things for too long.
Yeah.
And so there's a load of them. I think it's her who's had to have that done. There's a lady called Monique Jones who's had to have that done. And then one called, I think she's Marvelous Martin. Well, her name was Margie V. Martin originally. They've all had to have fillers done because like they've masculinized, because they were bang at it. Like they were on those crazy compounds. You know, the I don't want to say male cycles, but almost like male athlete cycles. So if you're a non-bodybuilder, where you're up into the 3 grams per kilo of body weight, 3 milligrams.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just, and that's why you're hearing about women dying now. I mean, because they're doing crazy shit like guys are doing. I mean, the reason why the women have had to downsize is because the IFBB have had to change, because women bodybuilding was dying, like literally dying. The only people who were watching it were these perverts who they call schmoes, who like muscle worship the women. You know, they're these crazy guys who, you know, perverted. They're the only people that were interested in women's bodybuilding. So women's bodybuilding basically wasn't making any money. So basically what they've done now is they don't call it women's bodybuilding anymore. They call it women's physique. And they've downsized them, and they've tried to make them look a bit more feminine. This is why they don't put so much. You don't earn so much points for being in condition anymore, and also being too big. And then that's why they've got all the other categories below physique. So you've got women's fitness, and then you've got there was another one, bikini. That's it. Bikini. That's the most popular one, obviously. And even those women are using stuff, because I know plenty of them. Even they're using the 5 milligram Anavar crew, as you mentioned before. Even they're using stuff, and it's not that. In fact, I remember speaking to before I stopped going regularly to muscle work, a bikini lady, and she was on like 20 milligrams of Anavar, and I'm like, why? You don't even need size of bikini. Yeah, but I need to be shredded, and I need to. I said, listen, you are doing things, but who's advising you? And she was, obviously, it was her boyfriend. I was advising her, who's a bodybuilder. And I said, listen, you don't even need anabolic steroids for bikini. You don't need anabolic steroids for bikini. If you want to use anything, go and use some. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't need anabolic steroids for bikini. But yeah, so that's the reason why they've all, it's all changed now, women's bodybuilding. But there's still a lot of people. I say a lot, but there's a sizable amount of people that want to see women's bodybuilding back, and a couple of shows have actually popped up now where women can get as big as they like.
Yeah, have you seen the lady that's winning that? There's a lady called Andrea Shaw.
Okay.
So she was doing women's physique before, and I think she just outgrew it because, like we said, but these guys they're taking crazy cocktails in crazy amounts, right? So there's her. Who else was one? Heli Trevino. These are all women who, I think they walk around, like when they're not competing, they walk around at about 14 and a half stone. Still in like reasonable condition. If you saw them in the shops, you'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I don't want to have a fight with you. But you don't get to that size. You have to remember, like, I remember seeing a picture, and I might share it on Twitter at some point. There's a picture of this bodybuilder called Monique Jones from when she did figure till she did women's bodybuilding. And I think she added like 60 pounds. I might be overshooting it. It might be closer to 50. But like fundamentally changed who and what she was. Crazy. But I think we're walking back from that because there's no money in that. What women are realizing now is the money's in that CrossFit look. It's attainable, but it's also not attainable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you can try
Same as bikini. Same as bikini. Like all the people that come to watch the women all come to watch bikini because, again, like you said, it's attainable, and it's what the guys, most guys want. They want to see when it comes to females. They want to see some TNA. They want to see some curves and, feminine looking women. That's what they want to see. Most of them don't come to see the jack ladies, And it's funny because even the men's categories, the most popular is classic physique. Because again, it's more attainable than the open bodybuilding look. Yeah. And the open bodybuilding look is not really as attractive to most people, women and men, as the classic physique is, So I've got a feeling. Someone said this to me. I read it in I think it was one of these podcasts on YouTube that I listened to, and they said they reckon within 10 to 15 years there'll be no more open bodybuilding in the men's category, and I can see that happening. I can see that happening because more and more people are not interested in open bodybuilding anymore. It's getting to the point now where the classic physique guys are now earning the same amount as the open bodybuilding guys, and they're having to take less stuff. So, the open bodybuilding guys are looking at themselves thinking, we're trying to kill ourselves to win these stupid trophies and get these contracts. And these classic physique guys are using a fifth of what we're using and earning just as much or maybe even more money, and then earning on top of that money on social media, promoting themselves and promoting their physique, because that's what people really want to see. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? I think you're going to see more of that as time goes on. I mean, even the women's open now, they're trying to sneak in through the back door. That's not going to last because there's no money in it, and that's been proven. They've had women's bodybuilding, open bodybuilding for ages, and yes, you got your iconic champions like your Linda Murray, your Corey Iverson, who are much more feminine than the Iris Kyle, but it was just going to a point where there was going to be no return, and this is why they had to do what they did. And I can't see them reversing now. I mean, you've got that stupid woman who doesn't even compete, Natalia Amazonka, they call her, the Russian woman.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Yeah,
she's like over 300 pounds. I mean, she's about 6 foot tall as well, but she looks ridiculous. I mean, she was part of the 5% crew, but I mean, she now does all sorts of things, including porn and so on and so forth, just to earn money, and it's just like, why?
Mate,
You know, why?
they all do porn. This is something I've also learned that, like, they.
Well, with the proliferation of OnlyFans, they all do it now. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
all do porn. So it's almost like female bodybuilding at that kind of open level is literally prostitution disguised as a muscular beauty pageant. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
Pretty much.
Yeah, because a few of them used to, when they came to London, they'd train in the gym I used to train at because it was close to central, close to the hotels and stuff. And that's when you learn about the game. They're like, oh, and I'm like, people pay that much to do what? And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a crazy world out there, bro.
But actually, you know what though? But you know what? Me being me though, I sit there and I go, okay, hold on. So this guy's gonna pay her 350 quid for an hour. Okay. An hour's about all you really need with a woman to get your fix. I was like, okay, how many dates would it have taken him in any other scenario? I'm like, maybe about 4. Pay for dinner 4 times. I'm like, actually, do you know what? There's an efficiency to it. Not my bag, but I can see why people would do it. But it's also quite sad because when you talk to the ladies who do it, it's to pay for the gear. Like, it's this weird paradox. Like, they do a lot of it to pay for the gear because if you're taking 2/3 IUs of growth hormone a day, like, that's not cheap.
That's not cheap. Not cheap. Especially if it's pharmaceutical grade.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
Not cheap.
Not cheap at all.
Pharma grade test, not cheap.
Not cheap. You know, this is why the guys do their gay for pay stuff as well. Same reason.
I said that. Do you know King's Gym near Croydon?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was in there once, and these guys were making fun of the fact that I carry a few extra pounds, and I said, in what world does a man need to have a 6-pack unless he's doing gay porn? Whole gym went quiet. And I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah, okay. Okay, who are the guilty ones then?
Yeah, that's yeah, unfortunately that's is very prevalent in the men's side of things, you know.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm sure that some of them Muscleworks guys are bang at it as well.
I'm sure some of them. Well, I know a lot of my people, like JD Dawood, who's like an uncle to me.
Yeah,
he was not interested in it. Because he never played the game, and that's why he never played where he should have played in shows. Because he was like one of the best British bodybuilders. Oh,
he's one of the OGs. I remember he'd be there. This is sort of our old school Muscleworks. It would be him training, Ian Wadley, and do you remember Big Joe? God rest his soul. Yeah. Those were the guys, man. Those were the guys. Like, you know, even now JD trains like a maniac still, you know. Yeah. But yeah, you know, the JD never played the game. He never went to America and, you know, did the photo shoots again and again and again, and, you know, kissed the judges' asses and all of that. He never played the game, you know, like a lot of these guys do. And so you knew he was never going to get caught up in that nonsense. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of the Musclework guys did. I'm sure a lot. I know Ian Wadley didn't either because he just wasn't interested in that. No chance in hell.
Yeah.
I remember when we do deadlift sessions together, and he's that sort of guy that you wouldn't even approach him to ask that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can remember once, that's how I got speaking to him. So I was in my early 20s. I was at Muscleworks. I was deadlifting, and he needed the platform. And he was like, why don't you jump in with us? I was like, well, how high are you going? He's like 7 plates. I was like, okay, let me see how far I can go. But I got to 210, and then I had to tap out. I was like, nah, I'm not built like you guys. So, yeah. But after that, we've been cool ever since.
That's good weight as well. 210 is good weight.
Well, not in an enhanced era. In an enhanced era, like if you're a man and you're doing less than 300, man, you don't look good on Instagram.
Yeah.
They're ladies, man. They're doing the insane sets with 245. I'm like, what's the world coming to? 225 on a deficit.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, honestly.
The hips.
What I'm seeing on social media now, although I have to say, a lot of them are using fake weights. A lot of them are using fake weights.
I know,
a lot of them
like Christy Hawkins, for example, one of the ones I follow, she's on the board. Like, she's done it at meets, calibrated weights at meets.
Okay.
Like,
but a lot of them, like Brad Castleberry, fake weights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a Brazilian lady as well, something Barbosa, fake weight. You know, some woman was trying to convince me she's that strong. I'm like, don't be stupid. You know, she's squatting 5 plates, and I'm just like, the way she was squatting it and the way the bar wasn't bending. I said, any OG with weights will know that's fake weights. It's just, you know, if you've been training with weights long enough, you know when someone's using real weights and when someone's not using real weights. Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know.
But
yeah.
So when I see all of this and I look at boxing, and my thing is, like, doping is mainstream now. People may not talk about it in the pubs and that. Sometimes they do after a few drinks. But most men under 40 are taking something. I don't care what it is. You may just be taking a bit of creatine. A lot of guys are taking the orals, you know, a bit of Dianabol. Some guys, if they've got the money, on the growth. A lot of guys are on the SARMs and the peptides. Doping's mainstream now. And there's no way that this isn't rife in boxing. Like, you know, like, I still keep my toe dipped into the amateur side of things. And I look at some of the kids now, I'm like, yeah, you're cooking with gas. I can see it. You know, especially when you see these ones come from like out of town, like from like Plymouth and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. But there's no incentive. We know testing costs money. This is why that in any sport there's not a lot of testing, because no one wants to spend that kind of money on testing, right? Especially when we know it's ineffective. So there's not much money in testing. On top of that, how much money does amateur boxing make to be able to then start paying for testing? Not a lot. So, of course, you're not going to get much testing at the amateur level. So, it doesn't make sense that, you know, it doesn't even make sense for that to be testing at the amateur level, because they can't afford testing at the amateur level. They can only test at the big comp. And even then, like, when I was an amateur, I never got tested once. And I was at the novices, you know, national novices, you know. I never saw any of my friends who competed in the ABAs get tested. So it's like, why are we even having testing here? You could be jacked up on all sorts of stuff. And as you said, doping is mainstream now. And I think, obviously, you know, social media has helped with that, because everyone and their mother is on Instagram or whatnot, posing with their physique, or is a fitness influencer or wannabe fitness influencer, and you know, is promoting this supplement and that supplement, and then people are now finding out about fake natties and what they could be using, and the ease to get stuff nowadays is ridiculous. Like, I remember back in the day when I was younger and I was first dabbling into this stuff, you had to know, you had to be in the know, you had to be in the circle to get this stuff. Like, you know, and to get in the circle, it took you years, as you very well know. It took you years to get into the circle with people to know where to get this stuff. Now, people are walking into the gym in their first session on stuff. It's ridiculous. Like, there's so many ways to get it. Even the internet is rife with people selling it. You only have to type in anabolic steroids. You'll find 10 sites straight away that wants to sell you anabolic steroids. And for the most part, they're real, you know. So it's that's the problem. It's just too easy to get nowadays, and so that's why, you know, you said earlier that it's so proliferated amongst every boxer, you know, amateur and pro.
You know
why wouldn't?
You know what they did do, Larry? Once they tested an amateur called Rosanna Cox, right? This is one of the maddest stories ever. So, just to summarize, Rosanna Cox comes over here from New Zealand, right? No one knows her. She talks about she boxed in the world championship in 2014. So you're like, whatever, okay, cool. Right? Doesn't really box a lot, but somehow with no real amateur experience in the UK, she boxes for England in the GB championship against a woman called Natasha Gale. Natasha batters her from pillar to post, right? But this girl, Rosanna Cox, has got a social media profile. You know, mixed race girl, not bad looking, in decent shape, was doing pull-ups and stuff. Always a red flag to me. There was just something not right about her. So I know people in New Zealand, right? So I message these people. I'm like, who's this Rosanna Cox? And they're like, oh, no. She changed the name. That's not the name we know her by. So you start doing some research, and it all points to stuff that's murky. Now I can't verify it or not, but it's a red flag to me. So the amateur thing doesn't work for her, and the pro thing doesn't really work out because people don't trust her. She doesn't relinquish her England boxing registration, so she's still registered as an amateur, even though she's going for a pro license. So they've tested her after she's like, I'm not boxing anymore. And she popped for Lasix. Like, of all the things, Lasix. So she got a 2-year ban for Lasix. And so I got messages on Twitter being, guys are like, what is this Lasix? And I said, Lasix is the reason you see bodybuilders have heart attacks on stage. It's one of the most violent diuretics you can take, and if you get the dose wrong, it's actually fatal.
Yeah.
And so your head's starting to like, why would an amateur boxer be taking Lasix unless you're trying to hide something? And I was like, that's one of the few times UCAD did its job.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Because people who trained with her were just like, nah, none of it makes any sense. None of it. She doesn't work hard enough to have a physique like she does. That's what I was told. She doesn't work hard enough to have the physique that she has. It doesn't make any sense. Were the words I was shared with. I was like, okay, cool. And I look at that and I go, if she's at it, there are a lot of these female boxers who are, because I'm like, I can't believe some of these women are holding the weights that they are. I can't. Like you're almost looking at them going, your body fat's so low. I don't believe that your luteinizing hormones and your FSH. I don't believe any of these things are functioning at those body fat levels.
They can't be. And that's the thing about female athletes, you know, who are low body fat. So low body fat they don't even have periods anymore. You know, how can your LH and your FSH be functioning well? How can you have mental clarity when your estrogen, your progesterone is tanked through the floor? You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it, you know, it doesn't make sense in general. You know, but you can still function and do what you want to do, and you know, and perform, you know, fantastically in a sport. It just doesn't make sense. And as Judge Judy always says, I love the Judge Judy. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true.
It's true.
So, listen, like you said, it's always a red flag. It's always, you know, especially with the female sprinters, but obviously with female boxers as well, who are a lot of them are very low body fat, and you see them competing, and they're competing well. You know, it's a big red flag. Like, how can your body be functioning well when you're such low body fat levels? It just doesn't make any sense. If you're so low body fat, and with a woman, you don't have to be very low body fat to stop your periods. So think about that. If you're at that point where your periods are stopped, you are not in a healthy state. Your body is breaking down, and the fact that you're actually be able to still perform means that something else is all right. You know, so. You know, hopefully people will ponder on this, you know, and realize this is why, from the beginning of sport, a lot of people were against women competing at a high level in sports. This is one of the reasons why, because they realized that actually, you know, with men it's a little different, but even to the extreme, like if men take low body fat to the extreme, if they're natural, their testosterone levels go down as well. So it's not immune to men either. It's just that you have to go to the real damn extreme which a lot of guys do go to now, especially like natural bodybuilding and whatnot. If they're trying to diet down or whatnot, they are going to take it to that extreme, and they're going to tank their testosterone levels. They're going to tank all their LH and FSH to the point where they're just going to feel like dog crap, But it's even more prominent in women, because a man can easily hold a natural can hold a 10% body fat level naturally, whereas a woman can't do that. You'd have to be enhanced to be able to do that.
Do you think GB check? Do you think they monitor their athletes? Do you think they check those blood levels to go, what are your health markers? I'm going to ask this question because they have a duty of care to do that. Now in the pros, you kind of take your chances, right? But in the amateurs, do they actually check that these women are in a good, healthy state? I wonder.
In the elite program, they might do, but they might do it as self-preservation, so that just in case anything happens to these women, they can't be blamed. That's what I think. That makes sense to me, because obviously, if people are dropping, same thing with the British cycling team. Their health is always monitored. Their health markers are always monitored, because if any of these people drop dead, during training for something, they're the first place people are going to look at. And so I think to protect themselves, I think they monitor these health markers. And it just make it so that it's within a certain parameter that they don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, because that makes me think of the whole Amanda Serrano thing. So when she fought Katie Taylor, and people were like, are you interested in this fight? And I said, there's one person who was found guilty of doping, and there's one who's highly suspected to be doping. And we're calling this the biggest fight of all time. I was like, it feels a bit too seedy for me. And the fact that Amanda Serrano's had a whole career where no one has really sat down and said, what was your role in your sister getting done, not going to jail, but being found guilty, and her boyfriend, who's now your manager, going to jail for a year? What was your role in that? Because you were charged, but nothing seemed to happen to you. And here you've got a woman bouncing up and down the weights willy-nilly, never seeming to lose power as she goes up or down. And you're like, come on. This is 2022. Are we still playing these games, these fake natural games?
Yeah. But it's I'm wondering if people are just not bothered nowadays. I'm wondering if people are accepting of the fact that there are performance enhancing drugs in the sport and they don't care.
I think people like the fake outrage, don't they? Because remember when Fury got done for Nandrolone, there was the outrage online, right? But they all watched the Fury versus Dillian fight. They're two guys who popped.
Do you think there was outrage though? I didn't really sense any outrage.
There was. Maybe it was the partisan sort of Team Joshua versus Team Fury. Your man's a drug cheat. But no one's really upset, because if you look at the Boxing Hall of Fame, people were happy Roy Jones went in. People were happy James Toney went in. They both failed drugs tests. It's not a secret.
Yeah. Another one, Shane Mosley, he didn't fail, but he admitted to what he was doing with the Balco Labs people. No one says a word about that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Boxing, that people talk about, we need a clean sport, but whoever's put in front of you to fight, you don't really care, do you? And I think deep down, the thing about boxing is it's a really simple concept, isn't it? Two people fight. And I genuinely think after a while, no one cares if Joshua's juicing or if Chisora's. No one cares, and I don't know why. Is it because deep down, boxers have no intrinsic value? They have value in terms of your support for them validates you to your group of friends. Because boxing fans are a weird bunch, right? They love the fact that they're boxing fans more than they love the boxers.
That makes sense.
I've always found that really weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. I often ask myself that as well. Like, do boxing fans actually care nowadays after everything they know that boxers might be on PEDs? And I have to say, I don't think they do. I don't think they do.
I'll tell you when they will
I
care.
think. Sorry?
I'll tell you when they will care. When someone dies in the ring and the guy that hit him fails a drugs test.
Yeah.
Or is found to have been a doper.
Right. But you see, this is the argument that Tony Bellew always comes with. Right? This and it annoys me, this argument. And Liam Smith tries to come with the same argument. So my argument for that is that presumes that no one has died in boxing before. You know, which we know is crap, because many boxers have died, you know. And then that also presumes that out of the boxers that have died, the person that was, you know, they were fighting wasn't on performance enhancing drugs, which we probably know that was the case in a lot of cases, right? But you're just presuming that because they haven't failed a test that they're clean. So, you know, again, then we go back to, okay, if two natural guys are fighting and one dies in the ring, why is that death doesn't matter, but a guy who's juiced up versus a guy who's not juiced up, and a guy dies, that death matters. So why is one death okay and one death isn't? It's still death. Then we go to the point of, okay, then what about if one guy is using creatine, which we know is proven to be a strength enhancer. I actually get more strength off creatine than certain anabolic steroids, right? So that's a fact, right? So we know creatine, and yet it's allowed in any sport, right? So what about if that guy kills a guy who's not using any creatine? What then? Does that take on the same level as a guy who was doping and who killed someone in the ring? Do you see what I'm saying? That's why these arguments are just stupid. They're asinine.
So I always look at things from a sport that I know in depth, right? So if you look at the problem with rugby at the moment, they've got a massive concussion and CTE issue, right? But no one talks about what's causing that. And what's essentially causing that is the fact that most of these guys are juicing. So you've got guys running at full speed at 130 kilograms, and you've got some guy at 95 kilograms who has to stop that. So the collision forces have an asymmetric effect on the smaller guy. And so you've got these guys now who can't remember anything. But no one talks about the fact that actually rugby players have been doping for so long that that's most of the problem. Because when the guys were smaller and slower in the 90s, those guys don't seem to have CTE issues, and they were playing 200-300 games in their career. And I think look at boxing as well. In the old days, remember you'd watch a 12-round fight, and in round 12, it was literally about who could stay up. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, look at someone like Usyk. Usyk's still doing 100, 120 punches a round in round 12. Mm-hmm. That's not natural. We know that's not natural. I don't care what hills you're running in Ukraine. Like, that's not natural. Mm-hmm. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how many extra power punches are boxers now taking in their career versus what they would have taken 15, 20 years ago. Don't know. Is it worse? I don't know. What I do know is the problem that we need to investigate, because the lawsuit's coming for boxing. The lawsuit is coming. And not only that, Larry, parents are now saying to their kids, I don't want you playing rugby. I don't want you boxing. That's really that's what's happening. And until someone grabs hold of this and addresses it, it's a real problem. I still can't believe in boxing you have to drink water between rounds. I can't believe the board haven't sat down with, I don't even care what company it is, GSK, Pfizer, and said, you need to make a drink that we can give each corner that doesn't cause allergies, so it's hypoallergenic, but it achieves these aims. It fills them back up with electrolytes, helps support the regeneration of cerebral spinal fluid, and also ensures that they can maintain a degree of alertness so that at least their reflexes don't diminish over the course of the fight. Develop us that drink.
And there's plenty of drinks like that already. There's plenty like that already. But boxing is that much in the dark ages that still all they give is water. Do you know how many injuries in fights, that brain injuries that will prevent. You know what I mean? And all they're talking about is doping. You know, as far as what you said about lawsuits, that's not going to happen, bro. I'm telling you now, for the same reason I've just given you. And in fact, if anyone did try to bring a lawsuit, that will probably end up being the death of WADA. So I'd actually like to see that happening, because again, people would ask, why is it arbitrarily one is okay, creatine, but a drug that's naturally in your body as well as creatine is, testosterone, is not? Like, who arbitrarily said that one's okay and one isn't? Was there a poll taken? Was you know? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what would happen. That's what would happen, because then people would be like, well, why is it okay for one death and not okay for the other one? Do you know what I mean? It's these standards. It will spell the death. That's why no lawsuit is happening. It will spell the death of WADA. It would really, in boxing anyway, it would spell the death of WADA. It really would.
And
that's why it hasn't happened yet.
I'm in favour of that.
Oh, I'm 100%. I'm 100% in favour. I can't wait for that to happen. I can't wait for that because everyone keeps saying, "Oh, what about?" But listen, it's already happened. It's already happened. And no one wants to bring this up. No one, because again, it will spell the death of what? Because then they'll have to really sit down and be like, yeah, why is it that this one can take creatine and kill someone and no problems there, but this one can take a naturally occurring hormone in the body, so nothing synthetic, testosterone is naturally occurring in the body, and yet that's not okay if you kill someone in a ring. And so then basically the argument is you've made one okay and one isn't, but there's still two deaths. Do you know what I mean? And then they've got to explain that. And the studies will not back up any explanation that they try and give. When I'm speaking specifically about testosterone, like, you know, it just won't work. It won't work. So I would love to see a lawsuit. Because I'd love to see the whole machinations behind that and the result of that.
Do you know what gives me hope, Larry?
Go.
That Edward Gutnecht lawsuit against the British board, where he sued, well, I think his family sued, and they said, had the board asked for his medical records, they'd have realized that he wasn't fit to box. Instead, they just took it at face value that he was past clear to box. I think the board had to pay out like a 6-figure sum. And I think what people are now realizing is you can test the board's duty of care in the courts. And I think the board are now realizing this as well, because they're more stringent on your medical history. A lot of people had to retire because the board said, no, you're not fit to box. And so the board now know they're under pressure. If someone did die, and by some fluke we found out that the guy that hit him had purchased, we'll just say at random, he had purchased Trenbolone, for example, that'd be awkward for the board. Because then you're starting to say, well, what are your testing protocols for fighters, especially knowing the degree of danger you're exposing them to? And then it will turn out that the board don't have a policy. And then so the judge will say, you should have had a policy. You're liable. In the same way when Michael Watson got injured, the court said, well, why didn't you have ringside medics? You know what the sport can do. When were you going to do it? It took a man nearly losing his life and actually having to sue you for you to realize, oh, we need to have ringside doctors and we need to give the doctors more power to stop fights. That's how the board learned. The board learned by having to pay out money for screwing up. It's a sad way to learn, but it's that triangle, isn't it? You know, the things that teach us the best lessons: wasted time, wasted money, wasted emotions.
Well, here's the thing though, because the British Boxing Board have outsourced their drug testing to UK Anti-Doping. UK Anti-Doping would bear the brunt of all that. Not the British Boxing Board. It'll be UK Anti-Doping that bear the brunt.
There wouldn't be a legal nerd here. No, because so UK are merely a service provider, so they could only work within the parameters that the board give them.
Oh no! The board has given them autonomy. The UK Anti-Doping in any sport have autonomy. So they set the rules, and I know that for 100%
Well,
because obviously
if ever someone was going to know. But if you, so here's how I look at it. The board could say for every 12-round championship fight we have, fighters will be tested, like 2 weeks before the fight. And I think we should even be doing this for weight making as well. Like we should be more stringent on weight making. You should have to weigh in every day of fight week.
Mm-hmm.
So no one's doing those aggressive weight cuts. There's no, you know what I mean? You're not using diuretics, sweatsuits, nothing like that. You're not. All of these things the board could do in a heartbeat, and it would bring some sanity to boxing. You'd box closer to your natural weight. You'd solve a lot of problems doing this. Because as we've established, most of the problems in boxing are down to weight making.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I look at boxing, I don't think it will clean up until someone gets sued badly. I think other sports, like rugby, at some point they're going to have to confront the doping problem. But what that does is it affects your product. You know, suddenly you don't have the freaks running around at 130 kilograms. You're back to how it was in the 90s, you know, a bunch of, knock-kneed men running around into each other, which no one wants to watch. We said this in the last show. We love freaks. You know, we love people deadlifting 500 kilos. We love people doing the Hercules hold. You know, we love people that can box for 12 rounds and put it all on the line. We love the Tour de France because we can't ride like that. We just love freaks. And fans have to ask themselves, do you want the freaks or do you want I don't know what you'd call them. The glorified amateurs essentially is what you'd get if you eradicated doping from sport.
And I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, everyone wants to see the freak. No one wants to pay to see something that they could possibly do. Everyone wants to see the abnormal. Everyone wants to see the shocking, the absolutely insane, the Usain Bolt, you know what I mean? That's what people want to see. That's what people want to pay money to see. And I don't blame them. And I'm in that category. I don't want to see something that I used to be able to run 100 meters in 10.3. Oh, sorry, 10.7. Sorry, not 10.3. I wish I could run it 10.3. 10.7 was my fastest time for 100 meters, right? If people were still running 10 seconds for 100 meters, I wouldn't be very far off. I'll still be behind, but I wouldn't be very far off. I'd be close to world level at that point. But no one wants to see that. The days of that is gone. That was 1970s. You know, no one wants to see that anymore. Even now, even in this day and age, if you run a 9.9 for 100 meters, everyone's like, yeah, it's great, but we've seen that many times. So yeah. Now, for people to stand up and take notice, you're gonna have to run a 9.8.
Probably a 9.7.
Maybe even 9.7 nowadays. Because but do you remember when just getting 9.9 was like, wow, the whole world is in an uproar because you've just done something fantastic. Now, if you run 9.9, it's like oh yeah, well done, yeah, that's all good.
9.9, that was like 30 years ago. That was popular. Do you remember when Linford ran 9.87? Was that in the World or the Olympics?
I think he won the World. He won the World then. Yeah, he won the World then because it was the world record at that point was still 9.86 by Carl Lewis, and he just missed it. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and imagine if he was to run that now in a race where it's an Olympic final or something, you might not even see a medal with that time, and that's an awesome time. And you might not even imagine 9.87. You might not even see a medal. That's how far 100 meters has come. You might not even see a medal, let alone gold, with 9.87.
It's like the women's 100, right? Like now, the most interesting record in sport right now is can someone go under 10.49?
That's never going to happen. You know why? Because even the women that have been confirmed as doping, like your Marion Jones, and your Zana Pintuzevic, although she's changed her name now, even they couldn't get near it. The closest they got to was 10.6, which is friggin' awesome anyway. But 10.6 is a million miles away in 100 meters to 10.49.
Yeah, because 10.6 is where the top women are now. Like, on a good day, they're hitting a 10.6.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
Yeah.
where's the rest of it going to come from?
I don't. Although you can get some freak like the guy who beat Kevin Young's record. You can get some freak like that come out and do it, maybe. But whoever breaks that record, they've got to know they're going to be under immense scrutiny.
Yeah.
Same. In fact, I would even wager the 200-meter record is worse if they break that. That's 21.34. That's even worse. Because I think that as impressive as the 100-meter one is, I think that's even more impressive. The 200-meter one. I think if someone breaks that, yeah, there's going to be eyes on you. Like, I think you if anyone breaks any of those two world records, they would have to do the flojo and retire the same day.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? That because really, if you think about it, there are two sports that if the top guys were found to be doping, it's finished for all sports. I think athletics is one, and football is the other.
Mm-hmm.
If Bolt had ever been found to be doping, athletics would have been finished right there and then.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like if you found Ronaldo to be doping, although he has every red flag over him that I can think of, but if he was ever found guilty of doping, football's done.
No, football's done. Football's done. But then also you have to think: do football fans really care? I mean, the whole thing with Messi and growth hormone came out, and no one gave a damn. No one cared.
But what the excuse was, he was taking it from when he was 13, right?
Yeah, that's true. But you know, a lot of these football fans don't know their arse from their elbow, so they wouldn't even know the difference.
Yeah.
But yet, all they ever hear was human growth hormone, performance enhancing drugs, but they didn't care. I didn't hear no noise about that whatsoever.
But
So
it's.
God.
I would say, and so here's the thing I'll say about where we're at with doping right now. The genie's out the bottle; it ain't going back in. That's true, and that's definitely true in boxing. I think people have now come to the realization that to get Anthony Joshua money, I need to do Anthony Joshua things, and you don't do that eating tuna and noodles. You just don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even saying this from a cheating perspective. I'm just saying from a pragmatic perspective, a 12-week boxing camp is hell on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to have anything in your arsenal to overcome the pain and the niggles, the inflammation when your elbow hurts, your shoulder hurts, and you've got to keep going. These guys pay a heavy price with their bodies for what they do. And the fans have a question. It's like, if you're not going to draw the line now, you may as well let it go to where it needs to go to. Which, and I think this is probably the bit that I take most funny. Like, almost thinking about where this doping's going to go. Because just between the last episode and this one, just the stuff I've been able to learn, I was like, oh my God, that's what people are using. It's like, remember in the old days, Winstrol was just for people who were scared to pin, right? That's what it was. Now people are talking about, well, if you take Winstrol, it actually improves cognitive ability while you're training. It improves skill acquisition. And I'm like, oh my God, is this the level we're at now? Yeah, so if I can't make you 10% stronger, I can make you 10% more efficient in your lift.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we've even got supplements for that. We've got Alpha GPC, which has been proven to work. I've used it, and you know, this is an over-the-counter supplement, but it's been proven to work. That affects your cognitive ability like nothing else, and it really increases your skill acquisition. So for something like boxing, that's immeasurable, you know. And imagine you using that to the point where you're using that in a 12-week camp every day. It's stored in your system, ready for fight night, as well as being, you know, used all throughout the camp. You know, and this is something that's nice and legal. Like, I hate using the word legal because it's nothing to do with law, but it's allowed. It's over the counter. It's not banned. But yet, look at the advantage you would get for something like that. You know, so you said we're getting into this new era with nootropics and all sorts of things that we've never looked at before, and we are looking at now, because obviously certain things are off limits, certain drugs are off limits now because the testing parameters have improved. And it's funny because older drugs now are coming back into focus because they are harder to test for, and also, you know, just as effective as many other drugs. Like, again, I keep going back to testosterone. Testosterone is one of the oldest performance enhancing drugs, and that's still used till today. It's one of the most popular because it's made by the body. It's very hard to test for, and it's effective. You know, so it's you know, and the thing is, a lot of people are doing a lot more studies into a lot of different substances now. So we're getting to the point where it's going to start becoming like the Wild West again, where there's going to be so many different substances, so many tweaks to different substances that you can do. It's and then on top of that, you know, there's the testing protocol. I think we went into this before, and you know, but we know that even the strictest testing protocol by VADA can be overcome, and we're not going to go into it here. How to overcome that, but you and I both know what we're talking about. You 100%. Know, yeah, and we know it can be overcome. No, there's no testing unless you're going to stick with someone 24/7. And that's not going to happen. There is no testing protocol, whether it's VADA, WADA, whatever. There's no testing protocol that can't be overcome. It's as simple as that.
You know the one that made me sit up and take notice? It was when they said they're now looking at animal sources to grow testosterone, well, to create sort of synthetic testosterone, right? Because traditionally the test was always based on the fact that it came from a plant source, so the chemical signature was different from human testosterone or from animal based. But if you were able to develop testosterone in a pig or a cow, you wouldn't have a hope in hell of detecting it in a test. You couldn't have a test for that.
And they can already do that. They can already do that. So that's how a lot of people are getting away with. So what you're alluding to is the carbon isotope testing for testosterone. So that's the only real way to really catch someone with testosterone. But even the test is so expensive that they don't even start off with that test. They start off with the crude testosterone to epitestosterone ratio test, which is rubbish, because I passed that test using testosterone. When I tested positive for EPO, I was using testosterone as well. I was just using a very low dosage of it, and and that was the time when they reduced the ratio from 6-to-1 to 4-to-1, and I still skated under that 3.5 to 1. So I never tested. So they never gave me the carbon isotope test for testosterone, which would have caught me because I didn't fail the first test, even though I was injecting a mil of testoviron, which is testosterone enanthate, every week. So this, you know what I mean? And so even then, that's flawed. So because the carbon isotope test is expensive, they don't want to do that test all the time. But if you've got people who can get hold of testosterone made from animal sources, then you will even beat the isotope test, and which a lot of people now are getting animal sources from, animal source testosterone from. Now, when I say, so it's hard for me to go into the science. I know you understand what I'm talking about, but anyone that's listening to this, what we mean by isotope is there's carbon-13 on testosterone and on testosterone, and depending on whether it comes from a vegetable source or an animal source, it's a different isotope. It's a different carbon, and different carbons are called isotopes, and they can check for this. So this is why there's a difference, even though it's all testosterone. That carbon on the 13th position is a little different from a vegetable source and from an animal source. So that's very crudely showing the difference of how they do the testing. But yeah, you're right, 100%. So if you've got testosterone from an animal source, you pass the carbon isotope test. You don't even have to worry about that. So then, what new test are they going to come out with? You know, and this is a test they don't even use that much because you have to trigger the testosterone to epitestosterone level test to then get our carbon isotope tested. You know.
And this was always going to come, like the science was going to run away from the doping authorities. And, you know, as much as they pretend that they're on top of it, they're not. Like I look at how growth hormone has changed. Like, it's morphed its identity in so many different ways now. Do you remember in the old days they just thought growth hormone was just anabolic? Yeah, it's just the IGF-1, LR3, that's the one that you really want. And so people stopped taking growth and started taking IGF. And now we realize actually there's a really important role for growth hormone in terms of how it stimulates the hippocampus. So it can actually overcome the effects of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And stress is generally bad for athletes in terms of that physiologically, really bad for athletes. And so you're starting to see this. It's, you know, almost people calling things like growth hormone and insulin, like you can almost call them nootropics or mood enhancers, because when you've got the right amount, you tend to offset a lot of the sort of the externalities that come with training and the anxiety that comes with that and the associated stress. Whereas in the old days, it was just, if you want to get big, you take growth hormone. Now we're starting to talk about, you know, the more nuanced uses of these compounds.
Yeah. I think it goes into understanding these compounds more to be more specific with what you need it for and which athletes will benefit from it the most. You know, I think that's what a lot of these studies are helping with. So, like you said, in the past, it was just growth hormone, IGF-1, blah blah blah. That's it. Now you're getting into all. I mean, this is why a lot of the peptides are now becoming popular. A lot of the peptides that the growth hormone secretagogues, which you know, up until recently people were using to beat growth hormone tests. But then they can now test for these secretagogues, so that doesn't work anymore. But a lot of people still use it to offset the expense of getting pharmaceutical growth. You know, so.
And
yeah,
man,
I mean,
it's good, isn't it? Because one of the challenges with growth is a lot of people start taking too much of it, and there's a risk of acromegaly, right, where your hands and your feet just get big, and your head gets big. And so when you take the sort of, you know, things like ipamorelin, GHRP2, GHRP6, those sort of things, at least you're stimulating your natural production.
Yeah. And like I said, it offsets the cost. And I mean, there's another one that's oral based. It's part of the whole SARMs thing. What's it called? MK677. That's it. MK677. Ibutamorin. That's it. Yeah. So that's the oral version, because obviously GRP2 and GHRP2 and GHRP6 have to be injected, whereas MK677 can be orally ingested. So yeah, I mean, this is a lot of research is now going into all of this, and again, like I said, it's helping with the specificity of these drugs, but not just of the drug, but of the athletes that will benefit mostly from these drugs. Yeah, so it's getting like I said, and like what you said, it's going to be very interesting to see where doping goes in the next 30, 40, 50 years. You know, it's going to be very interesting. And I've got a feeling that in a lot of sports, they're either going to give up this whole doping, WADA thing, or I'm waiting for someone from one of these oil-rich countries like Qatar or the UAE to create an enhanced sporting league. That would really blow people away, and then you'd really see what people care about, whether they care about the whole performance enhancing drug thing or they don't give a crap and they just want to see freaks do what freaks do.
And we don't
I'm telling you,
watch.
it's coming, bro. Huh?
We don't watch.
We don't what? Of course we would.
Yeah.
Of course we would. Think about it. If they opened up an athletic league and they said, right, you guys can do whatever the hell you like. Don't worry about being tested, bro. I'm telling you will see someone run 9.4, very sharpish, very sharpish. I've no doubt about that. You'll see someone run 9.4 the next year, literally, because then they're not having to, hide what they're doing and worry about testing. So we can't take this up into the competition. You can do whatever the hell you like. So within the year, you'll see someone run 9.4. No doubt about that.
Because one of the big factors that's helped a lot of these sort of discoveries around doping, like this growth of biohacking.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, people at home going, "What if I take this and this dose?" So an example of this, and I never thought this would actually make sense. So a lot of people, a lot relative to the number of participants in the sport, obviously, are looking at psychedelics in strength and power sports. So how do you dose appropriately, something like a psilocybin mushroom and it's more just for your mental state, right? So to almost detach you from what it is you're doing enough that it doesn't feel like a big deal. Which I find really, really interesting, because that's an area you would not have thought of, right? You'd have thought, well, just get stronger. But actually, it's like if you can remove any negativity from your mind, does that weight get easier to lift?
Well, it's not surprising that they're looking at that route now, because even from the dark ages, you talk about magic mushrooms. They used to call them berserkers, isn't it? From the Viking era, They used to take that stuff to go and fight in battles, because it just allows you to just forget about pain and just do some crazy crap. Obviously things like PCP and LSD are all part of that as well. It just takes you outside of yourself, and you're able to achieve things that normally human beings wouldn't be able to do. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I think even PCP is sort of something like that as well. But again, it has a negative connotation to it. It has negative side effects, which could send you doolally, and so on and so forth. So obviously taking just enough to be able to get the benefits without getting the side effects is what they're trying to work on now. But funnily enough, because I've read a lot of these studies, it's not just for performance enhancing benefits in sport. It's for performance enhancing benefits in war as well. Funnily enough, I forgot which Air Force it is, but there's I think it's the Australian Air Force that actually allows, although I'm quite sure a lot of them do, but I know as a fact it's the Australian Air Force that allows their pilots to take EPO, and their motto is everything's fair in love and war. I don't blame them. Listen, if we had a war going on, I'd want all our soldiers to be on fucking performance enhancing drugs without a doubt. That's the whole point. So, but yeah, the psychedelics is a very interesting field of study that obviously we knew about for hundreds of years, and now we're trying to refine it. So it is interesting. It's interesting how we always go back to the old stuff, isn't it? As we mentioned about testosterone, now we're talking about psychedelics.
Yeah, because it works and its risk profile's understood. I think someone said something really interesting. They said it's almost impossible to invent a better steroid than the ones we already have.
Yeah.
Too much work has gone into it already. We've exhausted it, and that's why they're talking about the next frontier being the manipulation of genes, which is scary. By the way, that's in terms of the frontier, that's scary.
That I think that's where it's really going to be interesting. Is not a word that even begins to cover it, but yeah, it's scary at the same time, because what you're going to be able to achieve, and I'm sure they've already gone down this route already, but obviously we're just scratching the surface of what we can do in terms of gene modification and, you know, stuff like that. We're just scratching the surface. I mean, what we're going to be able to achieve in like 50, 60 years from now with that is going to be mind-blowing. And I think that will actually make, for the most part, performance enhancing drugs obsolete. You know, I think that gene modification there is eventually going to make performance enhancing drugs obsolete. I mean, you can always argue that, well, no matter how much you modify the genes, performance enhancing drugs will still give a benefit in increasing what you already have, and yes, there's an argument to be made there. But I think there won't be as much focus on performance enhancing drugs in years to come, because that's the gene modification is where the focus is going to lie. You know.
Well, we're kind of getting to that point now. Like, I don't know if you've heard about like parents getting growth hormone for their children, right? Because they're like almost like, my kid's life chances improve the taller he is. So kids are being given growth hormone at a young age, so you don't end up being 5'1" as a man, for example. Like, and like not trifling doses. You're talking like 6 IUs a day. Which, like, if you took 6 IUs a day now, like, whew.
Yeah, that's a good dose. Let's say that.
Yeah, that's a good dose, and so you're seeing parents going, yeah, we need. So this notion of doping is everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's trying to take the advantage they can.
But it's always been like that, bro.
Yeah.
This is what, even down to you waking up in the morning and drinking your coffee. People forget that's a drug, caffeine, and you're drinking that to be able to get through your day, you know, or to wake you up in the morning when you know, to get ready for your day. It's always been like that. People are always going to use drugs to better themselves. There's that saying, better living through chemistry. That's exactly what we're doing. Better living through chemistry. You know, we are always quick as human beings to ask, instead of what can we do or what work can we do to improve this or that, what can I take? What can I take that's going to help me? What can I take to increase this? What can I take to take away my pain? It's just human nature. It's just human nature, and you're not going to get away from human nature. So this is why this doping thing is always going to be there. Always going to be there. Because it's in our nature. You know?
No, you're 100% right. We'll steal any advantage we can, and there is no bonus point for doing something clean. And luckily, I'm not licensed by any governing body, so I can say this now. I might be held to account for it further down the line, but hey, no one gets an extra medal for being clean. You don't get an extra pat on the back. You don't get an extra 50 grand in your prize money. You don't. Like, whatever people want to say, Lance Armstrong lived the dream for as long as it lasted. Yeah, and he's not broke. Lance Armstrong's not broke. And so I've always said the thing about doping and people trying to, as human beings, we love to tear people down. You know those people who get up every day, they pay their taxes, they live by the rules. They get annoyed when people don't live by the rules and do well. And you almost want to explain to them, no one does well living by the rules. It's never worked. Like, I remember when I was at school, I figured this out. I was like, if I just do what everyone else does, I'll just be like one of the other Herberts sat there. And I was like, nah, I'm just going to be me. And what happens? Like, the school throw things at you. Oh, he might benefit from this. He might benefit from that. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm accumulating things. I'm not even being that much of a troublemaker, just enough that is beneficial. My grades never suffered. But I've got more out of school than all those other people. And then they become envious. They're like, why is he getting all of this stuff? It's like, hey, I showed you the blueprint. Because the truth is, right, no one has ever said Fury's not a real world champion because he tested positive for nandrolone. No one has ever said that.
No.
And that should tell everyone everything they need to know about doping. Like, deep down, it's an inconvenience, right? Because the governing bodies painted themselves, like you said earlier, they painted themselves into this corner saying it was all about athlete protection and leveling the playing field. But actually, the truth is they don't know what the definition of leveling the playing field is anymore. Is it to let everyone go loose, or is it to test everyone all the time? One's cheaper than the other. And it's the same in boxing. I just think if you want 12-round wars in boxing, you have to let these guys pop needles in their backsides, men and women. Yeah, I think most of them are already. You just have to leave them alone and stop harassing them about whether they're doping or not.
And I think that's the way it's gonna have to be. At some point, people are gonna have to just stand up and say, "Look, what's going on here?" I think these questions will arise. I think they will. I mean, people might not see it, but I think slowly but surely, people are opening their eyes and they're thinking, right, there's something wrong here. You know, people are doing this behind closed doors anyway. So, like, you know, we need to let the cat out of the bag, and we it's as simple as that, because it's just getting ridiculous. And I'm telling you, there will come a point where someone and I know I keep mentioning these two countries because these are countries that have people that have stupid amounts of money. They don't know what they want to do with it, and so more than likely this is where the money would come from. But Qatar and the UAE, this is where someone's going to come out and just say, you know what, I'm going to create a sports league where you can do whatever the hell you want, and there's no testing. And that's when you're going to really see if people care about drugs in sport or not. And most likely they don't care. They don't care. Because, like, as we both just said, they want to see freaks. It's as simple as that. People want to pay to see the extraordinary. People don't want to see. There was a time in history when running 10 seconds flat for 100 meters was madly impressive. And don't get me wrong, for someone who used to be a sprinter, that's still madly impressive for me. But for the lay person, that is not impressive to them no more. Nor is running 9.9 for all that matters, for what we're saying. You can run 9.87, as we said earlier, in a 100-meter final in Olympics nowadays and not come away with a medal. That says something for how the 100 meters have progressed. And if you're going to tell me that it's progressed that way naturally, we all know that's bullshit. Because if you speak to every 100-meter runner going, as well as genetics, but we'll get into that in a bit. They always say you could, without drugs, you could possibly, with the right genetics, run 100 meters once or twice in your lifetime under 10 seconds. But the toll it takes in your body, that's all you'll be able to do. But being able to run it again and again and again and again, like a lot of these guys can, there's only one way to do that, and that's with performance-enhancing drugs. And then we get into the fact that it's only the last few years that we've had other races, apart from black people, run under 10 seconds. So, again, that tells you what genetic components are needed. And the fact that only recently that's been able to be done by other races. So, do they have now those genetic components, or are they using something else to overcome that? People need to think about this.
Exactly. Yeah, man. These chemical compounds have changed the world, and they've actually leveled the playing field to the point where, as you said earlier, now it's just it's a genetics play now, because there are no secrets in training, there are no secrets in supplementation. everyone's doing what everyone else is doing. And like, you look at the Mr. Olympia stage, the guy with the best genetics normally wins. Normally. In the 100 meters, the guy with the best genetics normally wins. It's different in skill sports like football and rugby, because you're operating across multiple dimensions, all of which contribute to the performance. But even that, people are taking stuff for better decision making. What was the thing that they developed in pigs? I can't even remember off the top of my head. There's it's like Cerebro or something. It's basically developed in pigs to help humans with decision making.
I heard something about it. I can't remember the name of it either.
Crazy. But like I said, like sometimes in a skill sport, it's better to make better decisions than it is to be a better athlete. And look, hopefully what people will take away from this is there are so many things people are either looking into or using. It's not just about steroids anymore. Like, we're so far past that. Now it's really about, like, we're really tweaking, like, physiology. We're tweaking physiology. We're getting a 5% benefit here, a 10% benefit there, a 20% benefit here, a 1% benefit there. And we're hoping there are synergies between them, which mean the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I think that's what it is now. It's more polypharmacy, but as you said, which is then now going to lead into gene doping. Gene doping is the future. That there's no doubt about that. That is. I mean, they've already started to try to test for that, which I know they can't. It's not possible right now, but in the future, who knows? But again, like I said, that's gonna be the way forward. I don't think it's gonna totally eliminate performance enhancing drugs, because, like I said, even with the best genetics, performance enhancing drugs will always improve you. So there will always be that aspect of it, but yeah, like you said, it's going to be tweaking and it's going to be more about drugs that can fine tune certain aspects of your performance now, as opposed to just taking something that can blanket improve most things, like as performance as anabolic steroids does, and various other substances, because that's how EPO came into focus, because we know EPO is focused mainly on stamina, because what does it do? It increases your red blood cell level extremely well. So we know that's a drug that is only for niche purposes, which is increasing your endurance, and I think that's, as you said, the tweaking of certain drugs and certain parameters is where it's at right now, until they get to the point where gene doping is the norm.
Because the one that they haven't quite figured out yet is what substance would help you manage lactic acid better.
They have put, well, like I said, EPO does to a large degree, because it just helps that whole recycling thing happen a lot quicker. And I can speak from personal experience that it does. But you could be right in that something specific. I mean, there's even natural substances that do very well in buffering lactic acid. One of them being beta-alanine. That's a really good natural supplement. They call it the creatine for endurance athletes, because it does, and there's loads of studies on it as well, that how well it buffers lactic acid through the carnosine route. But it's quite possible that they could find a drug that could completely eliminate lactic acid production. But then I think that, because, as you know yourself, lactic acid benefits on the other side as well as energy production. It might not be as beneficial as it sounds to completely blunt lactic acid production. So who knows? But again, this is all going to be part of their fine tuning and tweaking and whatnot. So let's see. It's exciting times, man. I have to say, speaking to you, it makes me realize that that it's going to be really, really exciting to see what happens in this avenue in years to come.
Yeah, and the thing I'd say to someone, because I'm conscious I've literally eaten up 3 hours of your time, Larry, but the thing I'd say to people is, don't be, and this is civilians only, all non-athletes, right? I will be very clear about who I'm addressing here. Don't be overly moral about this stuff. If you feel you need a boost of testosterone and your biomarkers suggest that, don't suffer in silence. Push for it. By all means, push for it, because you only have one life to live. And so if you can have a better life, and there are options for having a better life, do it. My only thing is medical supervision, and find yourself someone who knows what the hell they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for you athletes, if you want to know how to use stuff that is WADA approved, get yourself someone who knows what they're doing. and just make sure you don't take any risks. So I know there are a lot of people doing this backyard stuff at home. You're playing with your long-term health, and don't do that just to look good for people who won't even care what you look like.
Mm-hmm.
That's my counsel. It's one of those things. We're never going to get rid of it. So your only question is, how do I make it work for me?
Mm-hmm.
That's genuinely how I look at it. And listen, all I can say to the guys is hopefully they enjoyed this, because and you need both episodes. I think you need the first episode to understand the real detail. I think the second one was more important to talk about the wider themes, making sure that people understand that it's moved on from what they understood doping was. And you can either be scared or be inspired. The choice is yours.
Yeah.
So I have to thank you, Larry. Thank you. Number 100 has been enjoyable. This has sort of reinvigorated my enthusiasm for recording again. I've really, really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot as well. So,
thank you so much, Brian. And it's always good talking to you, man. Seriously, it's always a pleasure, man. So, yeah, man, it's good to do this again, man. And I hope that people, get as much benefit from this as they did the first one, which I think they will.
They fit together. Like, I think you could listen to one then the other, but my advice is probably don't take up 6 hours of your life. Break it up into chunks. Maybe have a notebook as well, so you can just keep up with where things are.
Yeah, but do you remember when we did the first one? That's what people ended up doing. They were so sucked in, they ended up listening to it all at one sitting.
Yeah, a lot of people did that. I was like, how? And there are people who had to go back and go, oh, there's something I missed. I got to go back in and pick up on that.
Yeah. But yeah, bro, it's always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I don't know, how do you put into words what it's like having to talk continuously for 3 minutes? To be fair, Larry did a lot of the lifting, so credit to him for being that prepared. So I sent him an outline, which was more of a brain dump than anything, and the fact that he could catch that and run with it just tells you here's a man who's on top of his craft. I don't think there are many in this country better than him for what he knows and what he does. And it's strange, isn't it? It's like having a lot of knowledge in something that you're not meant to know about. So someone was, how do you market that? How do you promote it? I have no idea. But there's value somewhere in that knowledge. It's a shame that, the authorities never tapped into that and tried to, use his knowledge as education. But as we talked about earlier, loads of interesting themes in that. And I hope you enjoyed all of that. We talked about what happened in the previous couple of years since we recorded, some of the general trends and themes we're seeing now in boxing, and actually beyond boxing, to use the pun, because a lot of what you see outside of boxing will eventually come into boxing. Boxing's generally last to embrace these things. And then also just a view on the future in terms of off-label use of pharmaceuticals, stuff like gene doping, all of those things that, all seemed like science fiction 10 years ago, but we're potentially getting there. And, it's going to force us to question our notion of cheating and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think we're ultimately going to end up going, let the freaks loose and let's just see where we end up. So hopefully you enjoy that, guys. As always, if you like the content, share it. Let's carry the discussion on and onwards to 101 and the next 100, I guess. You take care. Bye.